Welcome back to Potter Paradox. If you enjoy magical twist, make sure to support the channel by liking and subscribing. Now let's divine in.
What if Dobby found Harry at age 3 and raised him in the room of requirement for 8 years? Chapter 1. The rescue. The night was unusually cold for July when Dobby first glimpsed the small boy through the window of number 4, Privet Drive. The house elf hadn't meant to find himself in this bland Muggle neighborhood. His masters, the Malfoys, had commanded him to deliver a package to an associate in London, and Dobby had completed the task with his usual efficiency. But something, a strange magical pulse that no wizard would have noticed, had caught his attention as he prepared to apparate back to Malfoy Manor. Dobby followed the magical signature, curious about its familiar yet different quality. It led him to this perfectly ordinary house in this perfectly ordinary neighborhood. Except what he saw through the kitchen window was far from ordinary. A tiny child with messy black hair struggled to reach the countertop where a sponge sat. The boy couldn't have been older than 3, yet he was standing on wobbly tiptoes trying to clean dishes that towered over him. When a large, purple-faced man stormed into the kitchen, Dobby instinctively pressed himself against the wall outside. "Boy! Those dishes better be spotless or it's back in the cupboard with no dinner." The man's voice boomed through the partially open window. The child flinched but didn't cry. "Yes, Uncle Vernon," came the soft reply. Dobby's large ears twitched. There was something about this child, something in the quiet resignation that seemed far too mature for one so young. The house elf peered through the window again, and this time he caught sight of the boy's forehead as he turned. A lightning bolt scar. Dobby nearly fell backward into a hydrangea bush. Harry Potter. The boy who lived. The savior of the wizarding world, including house elves like himself, reduced to a frightened servant not unlike Dobby himself. This couldn't be right. Harry Potter was supposed to be living like a prince, celebrated and cherished for defeating he who must not be named. Dobby had heard his masters complain about it often enough. How the Potter boy would undoubtedly be raised to believe he was special, how Dumbledore had probably placed him with a loving wizarding family who would worship the ground he walked on. But instead, here he was, tiny, underfed, and cleaning like a house elf without magic. Dobby watched, his heart sinking as the evening progressed. He saw the boy finish the dishes only to be shoved into a cupboard under the stairs. He heard the locks click into place. He listened as the Dursley family ate a hearty meal, not bothering to save any for the child who was supposedly in their care. "This is being wrong," Dobby whispered to himself. Very wrong. The house elf knew he should return to Malfoy Manor. His absence would be noticed soon, and punishment would follow. But he couldn't tear himself away from the window. Not when Harry Potter, the Harry Potter, was being treated worse than many wizards treated their house elves. Dobby waited until the house fell silent. The large man and woman had gone upstairs to bed. Their equally large son had been carried up after falling asleep on the sofa surrounded by sweet wrappers. Only then did Dobby dare to approach the front door. With a snap of his fingers, the locks on the cupboard door released. Dobby pulled it open carefully, his tennis ball-sized eyes adjusting to the darkness inside. There, curled up on a thin mattress, lay Harry Potter. The boy wasn't asleep. His green eyes, so startlingly like those Dobby had seen in pictures of Lily Potter, stared back at the house elf with more curiosity than fear. "Hello," Harry whispered. "Are you a dream?" Dobby's ears drooped. Even at such a young age, the boy had learned to keep his voice down, to avoid disturbing his relatives. "No, Harry Potter, sir. Dobby is real. Dobby is a house elf." Harry sat up, rubbing his eyes beneath broken glasses held together with tape. "House elf," he repeated, the unfamiliar term rolling awkwardly off his tongue. "Yes, sir. And Dobby has come to." What had he come to do? Dobby hadn't planned this. He had only meant to observe, perhaps to report to Dumbledore if things were truly as bad as they seemed. But looking at the boy now, this small, underfed child with hopeful eyes, Dobby knew he couldn't leave him here. Dobby has come to take Harry Potter away from here, he finished firmly, surprising himself with his own boldness. The boy's eyes widened. Away. But Uncle Vernon says I'm not allowed to leave. I'm a burden, and nobody else would take me in. Dobby's hands clenched into small fists. Harry Potter is not being a burden. Harry Potter is being a hero to the wizarding world. Harry Potter should be treated like a prince, not a house elf. Wizarding world? Harry echoed, clearly confused. Like, magic? Harry Potter doesn't know. Dobby gasped. Harry Potter doesn't know about magic. About wizards? About himself? Harry shook his head. Then Dobby must definitely take Harry Potter away from these terrible muggles. What's a muggle? Harry asked, but Dobby was already rummaging through the tiny cupboard, gathering the few possessions that seemed to belong to the boy, a threadbare blanket, a broken toy soldier, and a small drawing of what might have been a flying motorcycle. Is this all Harry Potter is having? Dobby asked, his voice cracking with emotion. Harry nodded, looking embarrassed. I don't need much, he said, in a way that suggested he'd been told this many times before. Dobby felt a tear slide down his long nose. Harry Potter will be needing more where we is going. Much more. But first, we must leave before the muggles wake up. Where are we going? Harry asked, but he was already standing, clearly willing to go anywhere that wasn't the cupboard. Somewhere safe, Dobby promised, though he had no idea where that might be. He held out his hand to the small boy. Harry Potter must hold Dobby's hand tightly and not let go, no matter what. Harry slipped his tiny hand into Dobby's. The trust in that simple gesture nearly broke the house elf's heart. This might feel strange, Dobby warned. But it will be over quickly. Before Harry could respond, Dobby snapped his fingers, and they disappeared from Privet Drive with a faint pop that nobody heard. They reappeared in a dark, cavernous space that echoed with the distant hoots of owls. Harry stumbled, looking wildly around. Where are we? He whispered, clinging to Dobby's hand. Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry, Dobby replied, his large eyes scanning the shadows nervously. The Ollery. Nobody comes here at night. School. Harry repeated, his voice small. I'm not old enough for school yet. Dudley is going to nursery, but Aunt Petunia says I'm too stupid. Harry Potter is not stupid. Dobby interrupted fiercely. Harry Potter is a great wizard. Or will be, when he is learning how. Harry looked skeptical but didn't argue. Instead, he asked, why are we at a school? Won't there be teachers who'll send me back? Dobby's ears drooped again. He hadn't thought this through. Where could he take Harry Potter that would be safe? Not Malfoy Manor, certainly. And while Dobby had heard Hogwarts was the safest place in Britain, it was also full of wizards who would immediately return Harry to his relatives, or worse, to the wizard authorities who might punish Dobby severely for kidnapping the boy who lived. Dobby needs to think, the house elf muttered, pacing in small circles. An owl swooped low over their heads, making Harry duck with a small gasp. The sound echoed off the stone walls, louder than Dobby would have liked. We can't stay here, he decided. We needs a place where no one will find us. A place where Harry Potter can be safe. A place with food and beds and everything Harry Potter needs. As Dobby pondered their predicament, something tickled at the edge of his memory. Old house elf tales, whispered in the servants' quarters of Malfoy Manor, spoke of a special room at Hogwarts. A room that appeared only when desperately needed, providing whatever the seeker required. Dobby knows where to go, he said suddenly, taking Harry's hand again. But we must be very quiet. If we is caught. He didn't finish the sentence. Harry nodded solemnly, demonstrating once again a comprehension of danger that no 3-year-old should possess. They crept through the castle corridors, freezing at every creaking suit of armor and flickering torch. Twice they had to hide in alcoves as ghosts drifted past, and once they narrowly avoided Mrs. Norris, the caretaker's cat, whose glowing eyes seemed to pierce right through them from the end of a hallway. Finally, they reached the 7th-floor corridor. Dobby led Harry to a blank stretch of wall opposite a tapestry of dancing trolls. "What now?" Harry whispered, eyeing the empty wall dubiously. "Now Dobby must think very hard," the house elf replied, closing his eyes in concentration. "We needs a place to hide, a place where Harry Potter will be safe and have everything he needs, a place no one else can find." Dobby paced back and forth 3 times, his face scrunched up with effort. When he opened his eyes, a door had appeared in the wall, a simple wooden door with a brass handle that hadn't been there moments before. Harry gasped. "You did magic." Dobby smiled, pleased by the awe in the boy's voice. "This is being just a small magic. Come, Harry Potter. Quickly, before someone comes." They slipped through the door, and Dobby carefully closed it behind them. When they turned around, both of them froze in amazement. The room was like nothing either of them had ever seen. One half resembled a cozy cottage, complete with a crackling fireplace, comfortable furniture sized perfectly for both a small boy and a house elf, and a kitchen stocked with food. The other half was a colorful playroom filled with toys, books, and space to run around. A door in the far wall presumably led to sleeping quarters. "Is this, for us?" Harry asked, his voice barely audible. "Yes, Harry Potter. This is the come-and-go room, the room of requirement. It becomes whatever the seeker needs most." Harry took a tentative step forward, then another. His small hand reached out to touch a plush armchair, as if expecting it to disappear. When it remained solid, a smile broke across his face, the first real smile Dobby had seen from him. "No cupboard?" Harry asked hopefully. "No cupboard," Dobby confirmed firmly. "Unless Harry Potter is wanting one for his clothes and toys." Harry shook his head vigorously. "Then no cupboards at all," Dobby declared. "Now, is Harry Potter hungry?" "Dobby can make food." Harry nodded cautiously. "I'm allowed to eat?" Dobby's heart clenched again. Harry Potter can eat whenever he is hungry. As much as he wants. The boy's eyes widened at this unimaginable concept. While Dobby prepared a simple meal in the kitchen area, nothing too rich for a stomach and used to proper portions, Harry explored the room with growing confidence. He ran his fingers over the spines of colorful books, picked up and put down toy cars and stuffed animals, and stared in wonder at a mobile of flying magical creatures that hung from the ceiling, the creatures actually fluttering their wings. "This is the best dream ever," Harry murmured as he climbed onto a chair at the small table where Dobby had set out soup and bread. "Not a dream, Harry Potter," Dobby reminded him gently. "This is real. And Dobby promises to take care of Harry Potter now." As Harry tentatively began to eat, Dobby sat across from him, the enormity of what he'd done finally sinking in. He had directly disobeyed the unwritten rules governing house elves. He had interfered in wizard affairs. He had, in essence, stolen Harry Potter. And yet, watching the small boy eat his first proper meal in who knew how long, Dobby couldn't bring himself to regret it. Whatever punishment awaited him would be worth it. The first few days were the hardest. Harry woke screaming from nightmares, convinced he was back in the cupboard or that Uncle Vernon was coming to punish him for leaving. He would hide under the bed, refusing to come out until Dobby coaxed him with gentle words and promises of safety. "No one can find us here, Harry Potter," Dobby assured him repeatedly. "The room is keeping us hidden. And Dobby will never let anyone hurt Harry Potter again." Gradually, the boy began to believe him. The nightmares became less frequent. Harry started to explore the room more boldly, discovering new toys and books that seemed to appear just when he might want them. He ate regular meals without asking permission first. He even laughed, a sound so pure and unexpected that it brought tears to Dobby's eyes the first time he heard it. But there were still challenges. Dobby couldn't stay in the room of requirement all the time. He still belonged to the Malfoys, and his absence would be noticed if he didn't return to perform his duties. Dobby must go sometimes, he explained to Harry one evening, about a week after their arrival. But Dobby will always come back. And the room will give Harry Potter whatever he needs while Dobby is gone. Harry's lower lip trembled. Promise you'll come back. Dobby promises, the house elf said solemnly. Dobby promises on his magic. The first time Dobby left was the hardest. He'd made sure Harry had eaten, that there were plenty of activities to keep him occupied, and that the room understood the boy needed to be kept safe. Still, the look of abandonment in those green eyes nearly broke his resolve. Dobby will be back before Harry Potter goes to sleep, he promised. Just a few hours. Harry nodded bravely, clutching a stuffed dragon that the room had provided, one that occasionally puffed harmless smoke rings when squeezed. Dobby apparat directly to Malfoy Manor, bracing himself for punishment. To his relief, his absence hadn't been as noticed as he'd feared. The Malfoys had been entertaining guests, and the other house elves had covered for him as best they could, though they eyed him with curiosity and concern. "Where has Dobby been?" whispered Mipsy, one of the older elves, as they polished silver together. Dobby's ears flattened against his head. Dobby cannot say. But Dobby is grateful to the other elves for helping. Dobby is doing dangerous things, Mipsy warned. Dobby should be careful. He nodded but said nothing more. The fewer who knew about Harry, the safer the boy would be. For the next several weeks, Dobby established a pattern. He would spend as much time as possible with Harry in the room of requirement, only leaving when absolutely necessary to fulfill his duties at Malfoy Manor. Sometimes he was gone for just a few hours, sometimes nearly a full day when the Malfoys had special events requiring all their house elves. During these absences, Harry grew increasingly self-sufficient. The room provided him with simple foods he could manage himself, fruits, sandwiches that assembled themselves when he was hungry, and juices in containers he could open. It supplied books with moving pictures that told their stories aloud when he touched them, toys that engaged his imagination, and even a magical bath that filled with perfectly warm water whenever he needed it. But despite these comforts, nothing made Harry happier than Dobby's returns. He would launch himself at the house elf the moment he appeared, wrapping small arms around Dobby's skinny frame. "You came back!" he would exclaim every time, as if it were a wonderful surprise rather than a certainty. "Dobby will always come back to Harry Potter," the house elf would reply, patting the boy's increasingly less bony back. And so the days turned into weeks, and the weeks into months. Harry's 4th birthday came and went, celebrated with a cake Dobby baked himself and enchanted to change flavors with every bite. It was the first birthday Harry could remember celebrating, and he declared it the best day of his life. As autumn arrived, bringing cooler temperatures outside the castle walls that they never felt in their magically regulated sanctuary, Dobby realized they needed a more structured approach to Harry's care. The boy was growing, both physically and mentally. He asked questions constantly now, about magic, about the world outside the room, about his parents. "Why did my mum and dad die in a car crash?" Harry asked one rainy October evening as they sat by the fire, Dobby mending a small tear in Harry's shirt while the boy played with enchanted building blocks that stuck together without falling unless he specifically wanted them to. Dobby's hands froze mid-stitch. "Who told Harry Potter his parents died in a car crash?" "Aunt Petunia. She said they were drunk and crashed their car, and that's how I got this." Harry pointed to the lightning scar on his forehead. Dobby set down his mending. "Harry Potter's aunt told lies," he said firmly. "Lily and James Potter did not die in a car crash. They were." How could he explain murder to a 4-year-old? They were very brave wizards who died protecting Harry Potter from a very bad wizard. Harry's eyes grew wide. They were wizards. Like me? Yes, Harry Potter. Your mother and father were powerful and good wizards. They loved Harry Potter very much. What was the bad wizard's name? Dobby shuddered. Wizards does not speak his name. He is called you-know-who or he who must not be named. Harry frowned. That's not a name. Everyone has a name. His name was. Dobby lowered his voice to the barest whisper. V. Voldemort. But Harry Potter must never say it. Vold, Dobby clapped his hands over his ears. No. It is bringing bad luck to speak it. Harry looked appropriately chastened. Sorry, he mumbled. But why did he hurt my parents? Why did he hurt me? His small fingers traced the scar on his forehead. He tried to hurt Harry Potter, but he couldn't, Dobby explained, his voice filled with wonder. The bad wizard spell bounced back on him instead. That is why Harry Potter is famous. That is why Harry Potter is called the boy who lived. Harry sat silently for a long moment, absorbing this information. Finally, he looked up at Dobby with determined eyes. I want to learn magic, he announced. Real magic, like my parents. So I can protect people from bad wizards. Dobby's heart swelled with pride. Even raised in isolation, with only a house elf for company, Harry Potter's innate goodness shone through. Dobby will teach Harry Potter what he can, the house elf promised. But house elf magic is different from wizard magic. When Harry Potter is 11, he will come to Hogwarts as a proper student and learn wizard magic. But that's forever away. Harry protested. I want to learn now. Dobby smiled at the boy's impatience. There is much Harry Potter can learn before then. And. He hesitated, considering. Perhaps the room can help us find books about wizard magic too. Sure enough, the next morning, a small bookshelf had appeared beside Harry's bed, filled with elementary magical texts suitable for a young child, Magic for Mini Wizards, My First Book of Charms, and Beginner's Guide to Magical Plants and Creatures. Harry was ecstatic. Though he couldn't read all the words yet, the books were enchanted similarly to his storybooks, speaking aloud when tapped and showing moving demonstrations of simple spells and magical concepts. Look, Dobby! Harry exclaimed, pointing to an illustration of a feather floating in the air. It says this is one of the first spells students learn at Hogwarts. Wingardium Leviosa, he pronounced carefully, waving a stick he'd found in a playbox in place of a proper wand. To both their shock, the book actually rose a few inches off the floor before dropping back down. Harry Potter did magic. Dobby gasped, his eyes wider than ever. Without a proper wand. Harry looked equally stunned. Did I really? I did magic. His face broke into a huge grin. Can I try again? From that day forward, their days took on a new rhythm. Mornings were for what Dobby called regular learning, reading, writing, and numbers. The room provided worksheets that corrected themselves when Harry completed them and books that adjusted their difficulty based on his progress. Afternoons were for magic learning. Though Harry couldn't perform most spells without a wand, he could read about magical theory, practice the movements with his stick, and memorize incantations. Occasionally, when his concentration was particularly intense, small magical effects would occur, a flicker of light at the end of his makeshift wand, a slight warming of a cup of water he was trying to heat, or the gentle movement of a small object he was attempting to levitate. Harry Potter is having very strong magic for one so young, Dobby observed proudly. Most wizard children is not showing such control until much older. Harry beamed at the praise. It's because I have the best teacher, he said, hugging Dobby. The house elf blushed to the tips of his ears. Dobby is not a proper teacher. But Dobby is doing his best for Harry Potter. And he was. In addition to academics, Dobby made sure Harry learned practical skills, how to tidy up after himself, how to prepare simple meals, and how to mend tears in clothing, though the room usually provided new garments whenever Harry's became too worn or small. He also taught Harry about the wizarding world, its customs, its government, and its history. Much of what Dobby knew came from overheard conversations at Malfoy Manor or from other house elves, so his knowledge had significant gaps, but he did his best to prepare Harry for the world he would eventually rejoin. Why can't we just stay here forever? Harry asked one night as Dobby tucked him into bed. The house elf sighed. Harry Potter must go to school properly someday. Harry Potter must learn to be with other wizards and witches. And he hesitated. There is things about Harry Potter's destiny that Dobby does not understand, but Dobby knows Harry Potter is important to the wizarding world. Harry frowned. Because of the bad wizard? Because I'm the boy who lived? Yes, Harry Potter. But also because Harry Potter is kind and brave and smart. Harry Potter will be a great wizard someday, not just because of what happened when he was a baby, but because of who he is choosing to be. Harry seemed to consider this. I just want to be Harry, he said finally. Not the boy who lived. Just Harry. Dobby patted his hand gently. To Dobby, Harry Potter is always being just Harry. Now sleep. We have more learning tomorrow. As Harry drifted off to sleep, Dobby sat watching over him, his heart full of conflicting emotions. He loved this child as if Harry were his own, and the thought of eventually sending him out into the dangerous wizarding world terrified him. Yet he knew he couldn't keep Harry hidden forever. Someday, the boy would need to fulfill his destiny, whatever that might be. But not yet, Dobby promised himself. Not while Harry was still so small, so vulnerable. For now, they were safe in their magical sanctuary, and Dobby would make the most of every day they had together. Harry's 5th birthday arrived in a flurry of excitement. The room outdid itself, decorating every surface with balloons and streamers in Harry's favorite colors. A birthday cake twice the size of the previous year's appeared on the table, along with wrapped presents that neither Harry nor Dobby had placed there. The room is giving Harry Potter gifts. Dobby exclaimed, as amazed as the birthday boy. Harry tore into the packages with the enthusiasm of any 5-year-old, revealing books about Quidditch, which Dobby had told him about but which he'd never seen, a set of child-safe potions ingredients with simple recipes, and most exciting of all, a toy broomstick that actually hovered a foot off the ground. Can I try it? Can I? Harry begged, already climbing onto the small broom before Dobby could answer. The house elf wrung his hands anxiously. Harry Potter must be careful. The ceiling is high but not like outside. And Harry Potter must not bump into things. But his worries were unnecessary. From the moment Harry kicked off from the ground, it was clear he had a natural affinity for flying. He zoomed around the room with perfect control, whooping with joy, his messy black hair blown back to fully reveal the famous scar. Harry Potter is a natural flyer, just like his father, Dobby observed, remembering conversations he'd overheard about James Potter's legendary skills as a Gryffindor Quidditch player. My dad flew? Harry asked, hovering beside Dobby with newfound skill. On a real broomstick? Oh yes. James Potter was being the best chaser Hogwarts had seen in many years. The other house elves who worked at Hogwarts told Dobby all about it. Harry's eyes shone with pride. I want to be just as good as him, he declared. Can we make the room bigger so I can really fly? Dobby considered this. The room of requirement was already spacious, but it might be able to expand further. Harry Potter should think very hard about what he needs, a big, open space for flying, and maybe the room will change. Harry closed his eyes, his face scrunching up with concentration. Gradually, the walls of the room seemed to recede, the ceiling rose higher, and the furniture compressed into one corner, leaving a vast open space reminiscent of a small Quidditch pitch, complete with 3 golden hoops at one end. It worked! Harry cried, opening his eyes to see the transformation. Without hesitation, he zoomed off again, reveling in the freedom of the expanded space. Dobby watched proudly, though still with a hint of anxiety. Harry was growing up so quickly, showing new skills and strengths every day. The timid, malnourished 3-year-old who had trusted Dobby enough to leave Privet Drive was now a confident, healthy 5-year-old who radiated happiness and curiosity. Yet with this growth came new challenges. Harry was increasingly interested in the world outside their sanctuary. He asked endless questions about Hogwarts, about other children, about the places Dobby went when he wasn't in the room of requirement. "When can I go outside?" became his most frequent question. "Just for a little while. Just to see." Dobby always gave the same answer: "It's not safe yet, Harry Potter. When you is older." But as Harry's 5th year progressed into his 6th, Dobby began to realize they couldn't stay completely isolated forever. Harry needed more than books and toys. He needed experiences, fresh air, and eventually, interaction with other children. The solution came to Dobby one night as he watched Harry sleep. The boy had fallen asleep with Hogwarts, a history, open beside him, his glasses askew on his face. Dobby gently removed the glasses and bookmarked the page, noticing it was open to a description of the Hogwarts grounds and the Black Lake. "Perhaps," Dobby whispered to himself, "we can go outside sometimes. Very carefully. Very secretly." And so began their midnight excursions. Once every few weeks, when Dobby was certain the castle was asleep and the grounds empty, he would disillusion Harry, a charm he'd learned from watching the Malfoys and had practiced diligently, and lead him through the corridors of Hogwarts and out onto the moonlit grounds. Their first excursion was simply to a small courtyard within the castle walls. Harry stood in silent wonder, feeling the night breeze on his face for the first time in nearly 3 years, staring up at the stars that were so much clearer and more numerous than he remembered from his few glimpses of the night sky at Privet Drive. "It's so big," he whispered, turning in a slow circle. "Everything's so big." Dobby nodded, keeping a watchful eye out for any signs of movement within the castle. "The world is very big, Harry Potter. Much bigger than our room." "I like it," Harry decided, spreading his arms as if to embrace the entirety of the night sky. "But I think I like our room too. It's safer." Dobby smiled, relieved that Harry wasn't immediately demanding more freedom than they could safely manage. "Our room is safer," he agreed. "But sometimes, when it's quiet like this, we can come out for a little while." As the months passed, their excursions grew slightly bolder. They visited the edge of the Forbidden Forest, though Dobby absolutely refused to enter it, the shores of the Black Lake, where Harry watched in fascination as the giant squid lazily waved a tentacle at the moon, and even the Quidditch pitch, where Harry longingly eyed the goal posts soaring high above, far higher than the ones in their room. During term time, when the castle was full of students and teachers, they stayed strictly within the room of requirement. But during holidays, especially the long summer break when the castle emptied almost entirely, they ventured out more frequently. It was during one such summer excursion, when Harry was 6½ that they had their first close call. They had gone to the Quidditch pitch, where Harry was flying slow, careful circles on his toy broomstick, which the room had gradually allowed to fly higher as his skills improved. Dobby sat in the lowest row of the stands, keeping watch while enjoying the sight of Harry's evident joy. So focused was he on Harry that he almost missed the approaching footsteps. Almost. "Harry Potter!" Dobby squeaked in alarm. "Someone is coming. Quick!" Harry immediately flew down, his eyes wide with fear and excitement. Dobby cast the disillusionment charm with shaking hands, then grabbed Harry's now invisible form and disapparated with a crack that echoed across the empty pitch. They reappeared in the room of requirement, both breathing heavily from the narrow escape. "Who was it?" Harry asked, as Dobby removed the disillusionment charm. "Dobby is not seeing," the house elf admitted. "But it was being someone big. Maybe the gamekeeper." Harry's eyes lit up. "Hagrid? You've told me about him. He's friendly, isn't he? Maybe we could have said hello." "No." Dobby interrupted, more sharply than he intended. Seeing Harry's hurt expression, he softened his tone. "No, Harry Potter. We cannot be revealing ourselves yet. Anyone who sees Harry Potter will tell the headmaster, and the headmaster will send Harry Potter back to the bad muggles." "But why? Why would he send me back there? They didn't want me. They hated me." Dobby sighed, sitting down beside Harry on the couch that had appeared for them. "It is complicated. Headmaster Dumbledore is believing Harry Potter is safest with his mother's blood relatives. There is powerful magic in blood. Harry frowned, clearly unconvinced. I'm safe with you, he said stubbornly. Yes, Dobby agreed, patting Harry's hand. But Headmaster Dumbledore does not know that. And he might not believe that a house elf can properly care for the boy who lived. This explanation didn't fully satisfy Harry, but he nodded reluctantly. So we still have to hide. For now, Dobby confirmed. But not forever. When Harry Potter is 11, I know, Harry interrupted with a hint of impatience. When I'm 11, I'll get my Hogwarts letter and go to school here officially. But that's ages away. 4.5 more years. It will go by quickly, Dobby assured him, though privately he agreed with Harry. Sometimes the years seemed to crawl by, especially when Dobby was away at Malfoy Manor, worrying about Harry alone in the room of requirement. But despite occasional impatience, their life together fell into a comfortable rhythm. Harry's education progressed remarkably well, considering the unconventional circumstances. The room provided increasingly advanced books as Harry mastered earlier material, and Dobby supplemented these with whatever he could safely acquire during his time away, newspapers to keep Harry informed about the wizarding world, extra supplies for their homeschool lessons, and occasional treats. Harry's magical abilities continued to develop too, sometimes in startling ways. One morning, after a particularly vivid dream about flying over the Quidditch pitch, Harry woke to find himself levitating a foot above his bed. "Dobby," he called excitedly. "Look what I'm doing." The house elf rushed in, took one look at the floating boy, and promptly fell over in shock. "Harry Potter is doing advanced magic in his sleep," he squeaked from the floor. "Most wizards is needing wands for levitation of living things." Harry grinned, clearly delighted by this development. "How do I get down?" That was a more complicated question. After several false starts and one moment when Harry shot up toward the ceiling instead of down toward the bed, they discovered that calm, focused intention was the key. Harry had to clearly visualize himself descending gently to the mattress. Harry Potter's accidental magic is not so accidental anymore, Dobby observed proudly. Harry Potter is learning to control his magic even without a wand. This incident marked a turning point in their magical education. While Harry still couldn't perform most wizard spells without a proper wand, he began to develop remarkable control over his innate magical abilities. He could summon objects to him when he really needed them, create small balls of light when it was dark, and occasionally, when very emotional, even affect the weather within the room, creating miniature rain clouds when sad or causing warm breezes when particularly happy. "Is this normal?" Harry asked one day after successfully summoning a book from across the room. "Can all wizard children do this?" Dobby shook his head. "Wizard children have accidental magic, yes, but not controlled like Harry Potter. Harry Potter is special. Because I'm the boy who lived." "Partly," Dobby acknowledged. "But also because Harry Potter is practicing and learning every day. And..." He hesitated, unsure if he should share his theory. "And what?" Harry prompted. "And maybe because Harry Potter is learning some house elf ways too," Dobby finished. "House elves do magic without wands. We is using intention and need. Harry Potter is learning this way first, before wizard ways." Harry considered this. "So I'm learning magic like you do?" "That's brilliant." Dobby beamed at Harry's enthusiasm. Far from being disappointed that he wasn't learning proper wizard magic, Harry was excited about his connection to house elf magic. "Can you teach me more house elf magic?" Harry asked eagerly. And so began a new phase of their education, one where Dobby explicitly taught Harry the fundamentals of house elf magic. While some aspects remained beyond Harry's reach due to the innate differences between house elves and wizards, many principles translated surprisingly well. Harry learned to apparate short distances within the room, though this left him exhausted and was strictly limited to emergencies, to sense magical signatures in objects, and to perform simple household charms wandlessly. He particularly enjoyed learning to cook with magic, creating increasingly elaborate meals that they enjoyed together. Harry Potter is becoming the first wizard to master house elf magic. Dobby declared proudly after Harry successfully cleaned their entire living area with a single snap of his fingers. Harry grinned, though the magical exertion had left him slightly pale. "Don't tell the other house elves," he joked. "They might get jealous." Their evenings often ended with stories, not just from the books the room provided, but Dobby's personal tales of the wizarding world and, increasingly, the few memories Harry had begun to recover from his time before the Dursleys. "I think I remember flying," he told Dobby one night. "Not on a broomstick, but in someone's arms. And there was a big black dog, and someone laughing." Dobby listened attentively. These fragments were precious glimpses into Harry's early life with his parents and their friends. "That could be being Sirius Black," Dobby suggested hesitantly. Dobby has heard he was friends with Harry Potter's father. And he could transform into a big black dog. "Where is he now?" Harry asked. "Could we find him?" Dobby's ears drooped. "Sirius Black is in Azkaban, wizard prison. They is saying he betrayed Harry Potter's parents to the Dark Lord." Harry's eyes widened. "No. He wouldn't do that if he was their friend." "Dobby does not know the truth," the house elf admitted. "Dobby only knows what wizards say." Harry fell silent, processing this information. Finally, he said, "When I'm older, I'll find out the truth. About everything." Dobby nodded, recognizing the determination in Harry's voice. The boy was developing a strong sense of justice and a deep curiosity about his past, qualities that would serve him well but might also lead him into danger. "Harry Potter will find truth," Dobby agreed. "But Harry Potter must also stay safe." "I know," Harry sighed. "I'm always careful." And he was, mostly. But as his 7th birthday approached, Harry's curiosity about the world outside their sanctuary grew increasingly difficult to contain. The room, seeming to sense his restlessness, began providing more windows that showed views of different parts of the castle and grounds, the great hall during feasts, the library filled with studying students, the lake shore on sunny days. Harry would spend hours watching these scenes, soaking in the sights of the life he wasn't yet part of. "That's where I'll sit," he would say, pointing to the Gryffindor table. "And that's where I'll have flying lessons," indicating the training grounds where first years practiced. Dobby didn't have the heart to tell him that the views might not be real, that the room might be creating what Harry wanted to see rather than actual windows into other parts of the castle. Instead, he used these moments as opportunities for teaching. "Those is being the hourglasses that track house points," he would explain. "And those tall shelves in the library is the restricted section, where dangerous books is kept." By the time Harry turned 7, he had developed a mental map of Hogwarts so detailed that one might have thought he'd lived there for years, which, in a way, he had. What he lacked was interaction with anyone besides Dobby. "I know it's not safe to meet students," Harry said on his 7th birthday, after blowing out the candles on his cake. "But could I maybe meet just one other person? Maybe another house elf?" Dobby considered this request carefully. He had occasionally mentioned Harry to other house elves in the vaguest terms, testing their reactions. Most seemed intrigued but also frightened by the idea of a house elf raising a wizard child in secret. "It is not being done," Mipsy had told him when he'd cautiously broached the subject. "House elves is not raising wizards. It is turning both magical orders upside down." But Harry needed more than just Dobby. He needed to practice interacting with others before being thrown into the deep end of wizarding society at age 11. "Dobby will think about it," he promised Harry. "Perhaps there is being a trustworthy elf who could visit sometimes." Harry's face lit up. "Really? That would be brilliant." The opportunity came sooner than expected. 2 weeks after Harry's birthday, while working at Malfoy Manor, Dobby encountered an elderly house elf named Hoki who had once worked at Hogwarts and now served a distant Malfoy relative. Hoki was nearing the end of her life and had been sent to the manor to live out her remaining days with minimal duties. Hoki is remembering when you know who was just a student, she told Dobby as they polished silver together. Handsome boy, but cold eyes. Hoki knew even then that he was having darkness inside. Dobby's ears perked up. Here was someone who might have valuable knowledge for Harry, someone who had lived through the rise of the Dark Lord and who, being so near the end of her life, had little to lose by keeping secrets. Over the next few visits to the manor, Dobby carefully sounded out Hoki's views on various matters: house elf freedom, she was cautiously supportive; the treatment of Harry Potter, she was indignant about the stories of his disappearance; and most importantly, her ability to keep secrets, she prided herself on having kept the confidences of generations of wizards. Finally, Dobby decided to take a calculated risk. Hoki, he whispered one evening when they were alone in the kitchens, if Dobby tells Hoki a very important secret, will Hoki swear on her magic not to tell anyone? The elderly house elf's rheumy eyes narrowed with interest. Hoki has kept many secrets. What is Dobby hiding? First, the oath, Dobby insisted. Hoki considered him for a moment, then nodded. Hoki swears on her house elf magic to keep Dobby's secret, unless keeping it would harm an innocent. That was good enough. Dobby leaned closer and whispered, Dobby knows where Harry Potter is. Hoki's eyes widened to the size of dinner plates. The boy who lived. The one who vanished 4 years ago. Dobby nodded solemnly. Dobby is taking care of him. To his relief, after the initial shock wore off, Hoki didn't react with horror or insist that Dobby return Harry to his relatives. Instead, she asked practical questions. Was Harry healthy? Was he learning what he needed to know? Was he happy? When Dobby assured her that Harry was thriving, Hoki sat back with a satisfied nod. Wizards looked everywhere for him. Ministry, Dumbledore, even bad wizards. None thought to ask the house elves. She cackled softly. Wizards never see what is right under their noses. Dobby was wondering. He began hesitantly, if Hoki might want to meet Harry Potter. Harry Potter is wanting to meet another house elf. And Hoki knows much history that could help him. Hoki's expression turned thoughtful. Hoki is old, she said finally. Not much time left. Would be an honor to meet the boy who lived before Hoki goes to the great kitchen beyond. Her eyes twinkled with unexpected mischief. And what a final secret to keep from nosy wizards. And so it was arranged. The next time the Malfoys were away for a weekend social engagement, Dobby brought Hoki to the room of requirement. Harry, who had been warned of their guest, was waiting eagerly, practically bouncing with excitement at meeting someone new after 4 years with only Dobby for company. Harry Potter, this is being Hoki, Dobby announced as they entered. Hoki, this is being Harry Potter. Harry stepped forward, extending his hand as Dobby had taught him was proper when meeting someone new. It's very nice to meet you, Miss Hoki, he said politely. Hoki stared at the offered hand in astonishment. Never in her long life had a wizard, let alone Harry Potter, offered to shake hands with her. After a moment's hesitation, she placed her gnarled hand in his. Hoki is honored to meet the great Harry Potter, she croaked, her voice thick with emotion. Please just call me Harry, he requested. Would you like some tea? I made biscuits this morning. The elderly house elf looked to Dobby in confusion. The great Harry Potter is making biscuits? For house elves? Harry makes excellent biscuits, Dobby confirmed proudly. Harry is learning cooking and many other skills. That first meeting was slightly awkward, with Hoki clearly struggling to reconcile her preconceptions of the boy who lived with the polite, somewhat shy child before her. But as they shared tea and Harry's indeed excellent biscuits, the atmosphere relaxed. Harry was full of questions. What was Hogwarts like when you worked here? Did you know Professor Dumbledore? What do you remember about the war with Voldemort? Hoki flinched at the name but answered patiently, sharing stories of Hogwarts through the decades and her memories of key historical events. She had a gift for storytelling, bringing to life the corridors of Hogwarts during different eras and the many students she had observed over the years. Hokey was here when your parents was students, she told Harry, who immediately leaned forward with rapt attention. James Potter was always in the kitchens, getting food for secret parties. Kind boy, always saying please and thank you, unlike many wizards. And your mother, such a pretty witch with those green eyes just like yours. She would ask Hokey about house elf magic, very interested in all types of magic, she was. Harry soaked up these stories like a sponge, asking for more details, more memories, more connections to the parents he couldn't remember. By the time Hokey had to leave, Harry had made a new friend, and the elderly house elf had found a new purpose in her final days, serving as a living history book for the boy who lived. Hokey will visit again? Harry asked hopefully as they prepared to depart. If Harry Potter wishes it, Hokey replied with a small bow. I do, Harry assured her. Very much. Over the next few months, Hokey visited whenever she could safely get away from Malfoy Manor. She brought small gifts, a wizarding photo she had secretly kept of students from James Potter's year, showing Harry's father laughing with his friends by the lake, a pressed flower that Lily Evans had once given her as a thank you for extra hot chocolate during exam week, and most precious of all, her memories. Under Hokey's tutelage, Harry's education expanded to include detailed wizarding history and politics that neither books nor Dobby could provide. She had witnessed nearly a century of magical Britain's development and had a unique perspective as someone who had observed from the shadows. Wizards is not seeing house elves, she explained to Harry. So we is seeing everything. We knows who is kind when no one is watching. We knows who is cruel behind closed doors. Harry took this lesson to heart. When I go to Hogwarts properly, he vowed, I'll always be polite to house elves. And I'll notice them. Hokey patted his hand approvingly. Harry Potter is already different. Harry Potter sees. Dobby watched their growing friendship with mixed emotions. He was pleased that Harry had another connection, another source of knowledge and affection. But he also felt a twinge of what he reluctantly recognized as jealousy when Harry and Hokey would laugh together over stories Dobby hadn't been part of. Harry, perceptive as always, noticed Dobby's occasional withdrawal during Hokey's visits. One evening, after Hokey had left, he sought out Dobby in the kitchen area where the house elf was preparing dinner. Dobby, Harry said seriously, you know you're still my best friend, right? Even though Hokey visits now. Dobby's ears perked up in surprise. Dobby knows Harry Potter has room in his heart for many friends, he assured him, though the knot of tension in his chest loosened at Harry's words. But you're special, Harry insisted. You saved me. You're like. He hesitated, searching for the right word. You're like my father. Or what I think having a father would be like. Dobby nearly dropped the pot he was holding. A father? No house elf had ever been called that by a wizard. It was unheard of, inappropriate, revolutionary, and yet, wasn't that exactly what he had become to Harry? Hadn't he raised this child, taught him, protected him, loved him as his own? Dobby is honored, he finally managed, his voice thick with emotion. Dobby loves Harry Potter like. He couldn't quite bring himself to say, son, the concept so foreign to house elf traditions. Like family, he finished instead. Harry smiled, clearly satisfied with this response, and moved to help with dinner preparations. The moment passed, but something had shifted between them, an acknowledgement of the unique bond they had formed, transcending the traditional boundaries between wizard and house elf. As Harry's 8th birthday approached, their little family expanded again, though in tragic circumstances. Hokey, whose health had been deteriorating for months, fell ill with a magical malady common to very elderly house elves. Knowing her time was short, she made a final request of her masters, to spend her last days at Hogwarts, where she had been happiest. The Malfoys' relative, seeing no reason to deny this small comfort to a dying servant, granted permission. Hokey was sent to Hogwarts, ostensibly to rest in the house elf quarters below the kitchen. Instead, Dobby brought her directly to the room of requirement, where a comfortable bed had appeared for her. Hokey wants to be with Harry Potter and Dobby, she whispered, her voice faint but determined. Hoki has no family left. You is being Hoki's family now. For the next 2 weeks, Harry and Dobby cared for Hoki tenderly. Harry read to her from her favorite books, Dobby prepared the medicinal teas she preferred, and they listened as she shared her final stories and pieces of advice. Harry Potter must remember, she said on what would prove to be her last evening, house elves knows things wizards has forgotten. Old magic. Kind magic. Magic that comes from the heart, not just the wand. Harry Potter is learning this magic from Dobby. Harry Potter must not forget when he joins the wizard world. I won't forget, Harry promised, holding her thin hand gently. And Dobby, she turned her rheumy eyes to the younger house elf, Dobby must remember that he has done a great thing. Dobby has raised Harry Potter with love. Whatever happens when wizards discover, Dobby must know that he did right. Dobby nodded, unable to speak through his tears. Hoki smiled at them both, then closed her eyes for the last time. She passed peacefully in her sleep that night, her body fading into magical particles that swirled briefly around the room before disappearing, the traditional end for house elves who die at peace. Harry cried for days after Hoki's passing. It was his first experience with death, and though he had only known her for a relatively short time, her loss hit him hard. Dobby grieved too, both for the elderly elf who had become a friend and for Harry's pain. Why do people have to die? Harry asked one evening, as they sat by the fire that seemed dimmer since Hoki had gone. All living things is having their time, Dobby replied gently. Hoki had a very long life for a house elf, nearly 200 years. She was ready for her next journey. Do you think she's with my parents now? Harry wondered. Dobby considered this. House elf beliefs about the afterlife were complex and rarely discussed with wizards. Dobby thinks perhaps all good magical beings find each other eventually, he said carefully. Hoki would like your parents very much. This seemed to comfort Harry. Gradually, his acute grief softened into a gentler sadness and then into fond remembrance. He insisted on creating a small memorial shelf in their living space, displaying the few items Hoki had given him and a drawing he had made of her. Life continued. Dobby still split his time between caring for Harry and serving the Malfoys, though he found ways to spend increasingly more time at Hogwarts as Harry grew older and more self-sufficient. The Room of Requirement continued to adapt to their needs, becoming more complex and educational as Harry's abilities developed. By his 9th birthday, Harry had mastered a remarkable amount of theoretical magical knowledge and practical wandless abilities. He could control his accidental magic almost completely, channel it into specific intentions, and even perform some basic house elf magic like operating short distances, though this still exhausted him. Harry Potter will be far ahead of other students when he goes to Hogwarts, Dobby noted proudly as they celebrated with the now traditional birthday cake. But I won't be able to show most of it, Harry pointed out shrewdly. If people know I can do wandless magic or house elf spells, they'll ask questions about how I learned. Dobby nodded, pleased by Harry's foresight. Harry Potter is right. Harry Potter will need to pretend to be learning some things for the first time. Like acting, Harry grinned. He had recently discovered a cache of Muggle novels in the room, including some with actors and spies as main characters, and had been practicing different personas. Yes, like acting, Dobby agreed. But Harry Potter must always remember who he really is, inside. Harry nodded solemnly. I'm just Harry. Who happens to have been raised by the best house elf in the world. Dobby blushed to the tips of his ears. Their midnight excursions around the castle and grounds continued when it was safe, though they were more careful after a close call with Peeves the poltergeist, who had nearly caught them exploring the third-floor corridor. Harry's invisibility became more effective as his magical control improved. He could now maintain a disillusionment charm on himself for short periods without Dobby's help, though they preferred to rely on Dobby's more stable magic for longer explorations. One significant change in their routine came when Harry, now 9.5, convinced Dobby that he should be allowed limited solo explorations within the castle during quiet periods. I need to learn my way around properly, he argued. And you've taught me all the hiding places and secret passages. I'll stay disillusioned, and I'll only go out during holidays when almost everyone is gone. Dobby was reluctant but recognized the logic in Harry's request. The boy would indeed need to navigate Hogwarts independently once he became a student, and controlled practice would be safer than throwing him unprepared into the busy corridors. Harry Potter must promise to be extremely careful, Dobby insisted. Harry Potter must wear the emergency port key at all times. This was a small stone on a cord around Harry's neck, enchanted by Dobby to return Harry instantly to the room of requirement if activated by a specific phrase. I promise, Harry assured him solemnly. Safety first, exploration second. Their first attempt at solo exploration was nerve-wracking for Dobby, who paced the room anxiously the entire time Harry was gone. The boy returned exactly at the agreed-upon time, flushed with excitement and full of stories about the moving staircases he'd navigated and the ghost he'd carefully avoided. Gradually, these solo trips became a regular part of their routine during holiday periods. Harry gained confidence in his ability to move unseen through the castle, learning its rhythms and secrets in preparation for when he would walk its corridors openly as a student. It was during one such solo exploration, in the spring before Harry's 10th birthday, that he had his first actual conversation with someone outside their small circle. He had been exploring the library, fascinated by the vast collection of books he could one day access, when he rounded a corner and nearly bumped into a small girl with bushy hair who was struggling to reach a book on a high shelf. Forgetting momentarily that he was supposed to be invisible, his disillusionment charm had worn off without him noticing. Harry automatically reached up and retrieved the book for her. "Oh. Thank you," the girl said, startled but pleased. "I didn't see you there." Harry froze, suddenly realizing his mistake. He was fully visible, standing in the middle of the Hogwarts library, talking to a student. "You're welcome," he managed, his mind racing for a plausible explanation for his presence. "I, was just looking for something to read." The girl brightened. "Me too. I'm staying at Hogwarts for the Easter holiday because my parents had to go to a dental conference. I'm Hermione Granger, first year, Gryffindor." She extended her hand formally. Harry shook it, trying to appear casual. "I'm James," he said, using his father's name on impulse. "I'm visiting." Hermione looked curious. "Visiting? I didn't know Hogwarts had visitors during term time. Are you related to one of the professors?" "Sort of," Harry hedged. "It's complicated. I'm not actually supposed to be wandering around by myself." That, at least, was true. "Oh," Hermione lowered her voice conspiratorially. "Well, I won't tell. Are you going to be a student here someday?" Harry nodded. "Next year, hopefully." "It's wonderful," Hermione assured him, her eyes shining with enthusiasm. "The classes are fascinating, especially Transfiguration and Charms. Professor McGonagall, she's the Transfiguration teacher and head of Gryffindor, is strict but brilliant. And the library, of course, is amazing." She gestured around them. "It looks brilliant," Harry agreed, genuinely impressed by the towering shelves. "What are you reading about?" "Nicholas Flamel," Hermione replied, showing him the book he'd helped her retrieve. "It's for a project I'm working on with my friends." Harry recognized the name from his history studies with Hoki. "The alchemist? The one who made the Philosopher's Stone?" Hermione's eyes widened. "You know about him?" "It took me ages to find a reference." Harry realized he'd made another mistake, revealing knowledge that might seem unusual for a child his age. "I, like reading about alchemy," he said vaguely. Fortunately, Hermione seemed too excited about finding someone who shared her academic interests to question this. She launched into a detailed explanation of her research on Flamel and something about a three-headed dog that Harry couldn't quite follow. Eventually, Harry managed to extricate himself from the conversation by claiming he needed to return to his guardian before he was missed. "It was nice meeting you, James," Hermione said. Maybe I'll see you next year when you start at Hogwarts. Maybe, Harry agreed with a smile. Good luck with your project. He made it back to the room of requirement without further incident, though his heart was racing the entire way. Dobby was, predictably, horrified when Harry recounted the encounter. Harry Potter was seen. Harry Potter spoke to a student. The house elf pulled at his ears in distress. This is being very dangerous. If the girl tells teachers, she won't, Harry assured him. She thinks I'm just a visitor named James. And she was nice, Dobby. It was nice to talk to someone my age. Dobby's panic subsided slightly at Harry's obvious enthusiasm. What was the girl's name again? Hermione Granger. She's a first-year Gryffindor. Dobby's ears perked up. Dobby has heard of her. The other house elves is saying she is the smartest witch in her year. Always in the library. Harry grinned. That sounds right. She was researching Nicholas Flamel for some project. Dobby frowned. Nicholas Flamel? That is strange research for a first year. She mentioned something about a three-headed dog too, Harry added. But I couldn't really follow what she was talking about. Dobby's eyes widened. A three-headed dog? At Hogwarts? He wrung his hands anxiously. Dobby is hearing rumors from the other house elves that something valuable is being hidden at Hogwarts this year. Something Headmaster Dumbledore is protecting for a friend. The Philosopher's Stone? Harry guessed. That would make sense if she's researching Flamel. Harry Potter must stay away from whatever is being hidden, Dobby insisted. If there is danger enough to need a three-headed dog as guard, it is not being safe for Harry Potter. Harry nodded, though his eyes gleamed with curiosity. Of course, Dobby. I'll be careful. Despite this promise, Harry couldn't help but wonder about Hermione Granger and her mysterious project. His brief conversation with her had awakened a longing for friendship and connection with peers that books and Dobby, for all his love and care, couldn't satisfy. Is it really only a little more than a year until I go to Hogwarts properly? Harry asked that night as Dobby tucked him into bed. Yes, Harry Potter. When Harry Potter turns 11, his Hogwarts letter will come. And then I won't have to hide anymore, Harry murmured sleepily. I can have friends and go to classes and learn proper wizard magic. Yes, Dobby agreed, his heart both swelling with pride and constricting with fear at the thought. But Harry Potter will always have a home here with Dobby, even when he is being a proper Hogwarts student. Promise? Harry mumbled, already half asleep. Dobby promises, the house elf whispered, gently removing Harry's glasses and setting them on the nightstand. Always. As he watched Harry drift into peaceful slumber, Dobby reflected on their extraordinary journey. From that first impulsive rescue 7 years ago to now, they had created something unique, a family bond between wizard and house elf, a haven where Harry could grow and learn away from both the cruelty of the Dursleys and the potentially suffocating fame of being the boy who lived. Soon, too soon, Harry would step out of the shadows and into his destined role in the wizarding world. There would be challenges ahead that neither of them could fully anticipate. But Dobby was certain of one thing, Harry Potter was ready. Not because he was the boy who lived, but because he was just Harry, kind, brave, resourceful, and loved. And that, Dobby believed with his whole heart, would make all the difference. Chapter 2, Years of Growth. Harry woke up on his 5th birthday to the sound of excited squeaking. He opened his eyes to find Dobby bouncing on the balls of his feet beside the bed, a poorly wrapped package clutched in his long fingers. Happy birthday, Harry Potter! Dobby exclaimed. Harry Potter is 5 years old today. Harry sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes and reaching for his glasses. Is it really my birthday, Dobby? Yes. July 31st. The day the great Harry Potter came into the world. Harry grinned and scooted to the edge of the bed, where Dobby promptly thrust the package into his hands. Inside was a small, handmade wooden flute. Dobby carved it himself, the house elf said proudly. When Harry Potter plays it, small animals will come to listen. Brilliant. Harry immediately put the flute to his lips and blew, producing a surprisingly sweet note. As if responding to a call, a small brown mouse scurried out from a corner of the room and sat up on its hind legs, whiskers twitching. Harry laughed in delight. "Look, Dobby. It works." The day continued with special birthday treats, pancakes shaped like broomsticks for breakfast, a treasure hunt throughout their expanded living quarters, and finally, a cake that changed flavors with each bite. As Harry blew out the 5 candles, Dobby asked, "What is Harry Potter wishing for his birthday?" Harry closed his eyes, considering. When he opened them, his green eyes were serious beyond his years. "I wish I could learn more magic, real magic, like my parents used." Dobby's ears twitched nervously. Harry Potter is still very young for wizard magic. Wizards isn't starting proper training until 11. "But I can't wait that long," Harry protested. "Besides, you said I did accidental magic at the Dursleys sometimes. So I can do magic now, I just need to learn how to control it." Dobby couldn't argue with this logic. Perhaps the room can help," he conceded. The next morning, Harry woke to find a new addition to their living space, a small alcove lined with children's books about magic, simple magical toys that responded to touch and thought, and what looked like a miniature workbench with curious instruments. "The room is giving Harry Potter a learning space," Dobby observed, examining the new area with wide eyes. Harry immediately gravitated to the books, pulling one titled, "Young Wizard's First Steps," from the shelf. As he opened it, illustrations came to life on the page, showing a child about Harry's age focusing on a feather that slowly rose into the air. "Wingardium Leviosa," Harry read carefully, mimicking the wand movement shown with his finger. "The levitation charm." For the rest of the morning, Harry practiced the incantation and movement, using a small stick he'd found among the magical toys as a makeshift wand. Nothing happened, despite his increasingly frustrated attempts. "Why isn't it working?" he demanded finally, throwing the stick down. "The book says it's the simplest charm. Wizard children needs proper wands," Dobby explained gently. "And training from adult wizards. Harry Potter is trying very advanced magic for his age." Harry scowled, a stubborn set to his jaw that reminded Dobby of James Potter. "I'm going to do it," he declared. "I don't care how long it takes." And he meant it. For the next week, Harry practiced the levitation charm obsessively, trying different variations of the movement, different pronunciations, even different sticks as wands. Nothing worked, but Harry refused to give up. Then, late one night when Dobby had gone to Malfoy Manor, Harry woke from a dream about flying. Still half asleep, he reached out toward the glass of water on his bedside table, thinking how nice it would be if it could just float over to him. "Wingardium Leviosa," he murmured drowsily, not even bothering with the wand movement. To his astonishment, the glass wobbled, then rose shakily into the air, hovering for a brief moment before crashing back down, spilling water everywhere. Harry sat bolt upright, suddenly wide awake. He'd done it. Well, sort of. Excited beyond measure, he spent the rest of the night trying to replicate the feat, managing by dawn to levitate the empty glass a few inches off the table for several seconds at a time. When Dobby returned the next morning, Harry immediately demonstrated his new skill. "Look what I figured out," he exclaimed, concentrating hard on the glass. "Wingardium Leviosa." The glass rose wobbly into the air, hovering for nearly 10 seconds before settling back on the table. Dobby's tennis ball eyes nearly bulged out of his head. Harry Potter is doing wandless magic. At 5 years old. This is being unheard of. "I thought about what you said about house elf magic," Harry explained, breathless with excitement. "How you don't need wands, you just need intention and need. So I stopped trying to copy the wand movement exactly and just focused really hard on what I wanted the glass to do." Dobby stared at Harry with a mixture of pride and astonishment. Harry Potter is learning to blend wizard and house elf magic. Dobby has never heard of such a thing. This breakthrough marked a turning point in Harry's magical education. Rather than rigidly following the wizard methods in his books, he began experimenting with a hybrid approach, using the incantations and general concepts from wizard magic but applying the intentional focus of house elf techniques. Progress was slow and often frustrating. Some days, Harry couldn't perform the simplest charm; other days, he surprised both himself and Dobby with feats that should have been beyond his capabilities. By his 6th birthday, he had mastered not only a stable levitation charm but also simple illumination spells, minor warming charms, and even a rudimentary summoning charm that worked over short distances. "Harry Potter will be the strongest wizard of his age when he goes to Hogwarts," Dobby declared proudly one evening as he watched Harry practicing. Harry, focused on carefully levitating multiple objects at once, grinned without breaking his concentration. "Only because I have the best teacher," he replied, causing Dobby's ears to wiggle with pleasure. As Harry's magical abilities grew, so too did the room of requirement adapt to challenge him. New areas appeared: a small potion station with safe ingredients appropriate for a child, a garden corner where magical plants grew under enchanted sunlight, even a modest library that expanded as Harry's reading skills improved. One morning, shortly after Harry turned 6, they awoke to find that the room had expanded dramatically overnight, adding what appeared to be a small classroom complete with chalkboard, student desk, and various educational implements. "The room thinks it's time for more formal lessons," Harry observed, examining the new space with interest. Dobby nodded, though he looked slightly anxious. Dobby is not being a trained teacher. Dobby knows house elf magic and what Dobby has learned at Malfoy Manor, but Dobby is not knowing everything Harry Potter needs to learn. Harry considered this problem. "Could we ask the room for help? It's given us books and stuff before when we needed them." That evening, they experimented with making specific requests of the room. Harry closed his eyes, concentrating hard on his desire for learning materials that would teach him what a young wizard his age should know. When he opened his eyes, the classroom area had transformed. The chalkboard now displayed a weekly schedule of subjects: reading and writing, numbers and figures, magical theory, wizard history, and practical skills. The bookshelves were filled with primers and workbooks, many of which seemed to glow faintly with enchantment. It worked! Harry exclaimed, pulling a book titled "First Figures, Arithmetic for Young Witches and Wizards," from the shelf. When he opened it, the pages came alive with animated examples and interactive problems. And so began a more structured phase of Harry's education. Each morning, after breakfast, he would spend several hours working through lessons in the classroom area, with Dobby assisting when he could and the enchanted books guiding when he couldn't. Afternoons were devoted to practical magic and physical activity in an exercise area that had appeared, complete with miniature obstacle course that reconfigured itself regularly to present new challenges. Harry thrived under this regime. His natural curiosity and eagerness to learn made him an ideal student, even without traditional teachers. The magical books could assess his progress and adjust their difficulty accordingly, providing new challenges when he mastered earlier concepts. Dobby contributed significantly to Harry's education as well, though not always in ways that aligned with traditional wizard teaching. He shared house elf perspectives on magic, history, and the relationships between magical beings that weren't covered in any of the books. "House elves is seeing wizard history differently," Dobby explained one afternoon as they sat in the garden area, taking a break from Harry's magical practice. "Books is saying goblin rebellions were because goblins is being greedy and violent. But house elves knows goblins was fighting because wizards broke promises and stole goblin-made treasures." Harry, who had just been reading about the goblin rebellions in his history book, frowned thoughtfully. "Why don't the books tell both sides?" "Winners is writing history books," Dobby said simply. "Wizards won, so wizard version is what gets taught." These lessons in perspective proved as valuable as any spell or potion. Harry learned to question what he read, to consider multiple viewpoints, and to recognize the often invisible contributions of magical beings who weren't wizards. "When I go to Hogwarts, I'm going to be nice to everyone," he declared one evening after a particularly illuminating discussion about the treatment of house elves. "Not just wizards and witches, but house elves and goblins and centaurs and everyone. Dobby smiled, though his eyes held a hint of worry. Harry Potter has a good heart. But Harry Potter must be careful too. Not all wizards will understand Harry Potter's friendship with house elves and other magical beings. Harry set his jaw stubbornly. Then they're stupid, and I don't care what they think. Despite Dobby's concerns about Harry's unconventional views, he couldn't help but feel proud of the child's strong sense of justice. It was yet another way in which Harry defied expectations, not just in his magical abilities, which continued to develop in unexpected ways, but in his character and values. By Harry's 7th birthday, their routine had expanded to include occasional supervised excursions outside the room of requirement. These expeditions were carefully planned and executed with multiple safety measures. Harry would be disillusioned by Dobby's magic, they would only venture out late at night when the castle was almost empty, and Harry wore an emergency port key enchanted to return him instantly to the room if he spoke a secret phrase. Their first few outings were modest, a brief visit to a courtyard where Harry could feel real rain on his face, a midnight exploration of the Great Hall, empty and ghostly in the moonlight, a quick trip to the astronomy tower to gaze at the stars. Each excursion filled Harry with wonder and questions. How many students come to Hogwarts? What happens in this classroom? Where does that staircase go? Dobby answered as best he could, though many areas of the castle remained mysteries even to him. One night, during a rare summer thunderstorm, they ventured to the astronomy tower to watch lightning streak across the sky over the Forbidden Forest. The raw power of the storm entranced Harry, who stood with his face lifted to the wind, seemingly unafraid of the booming thunder. A particularly dramatic lightning bolt struck somewhere in the forest, illuminating the entire grounds in stark white light. In that flash, Harry caught sight of a dark figure moving at the edge of the forest, a tall, cloaked person, or was it a person, moving with unnatural speed. Dobby, he whispered, pointing. What was that? Dobby squinted into the darkness but shook his head. Dobby did not see. What did Harry Potter see? Someone, something, by the forest. Moving weird. Harry strained to see through the darkness, but without another lightning flash, the grounds remained shrouded in shadow. Many creatures is living in the Forbidden Forest, Dobby said nervously. Centaurs, unicorns, acromantulas. Some not so nice. That is why it is being forbidden. It didn't look like any of those, Harry insisted. It looked wrong. Dobby tugged anxiously at Harry's sleeve. We should return to our room, Harry Potter. It is not safe outside during storms, and if Harry Potter saw something strange. Harry reluctantly allowed himself to be led back to the room of requirement, but the memory of the dark figure lingered in his mind, surfacing in nightmares where a faceless shadow pursued him through endless forest paths. When he described these dreams to Dobby, the house elf grew increasingly concerned. Perhaps we should not go outside again for a while, he suggested. At least until after the start of term, when the castle will be full again and safer. Harry agreed, though not without disappointment. Their excursions had become highlights of his otherwise isolated existence, offering glimpses of the wider world he would someday join. To compensate for the temporary confinement, the room expanded its offerings once more. The day after their stormy expedition, Harry discovered a new door in their living space that opened onto what appeared to be a miniature Quidditch pitch, complete with child-sized goal hoops and a training broomstick that hovered at the perfect height for a 7-year-old. The room knows Harry Potter needs space to fly and play, Dobby observed as Harry mounted the broomstick with whoops of delight. Flying came naturally to Harry, just as Dobby had predicted based on James Potter's legendary Quidditch abilities. Within weeks, he was performing complex maneuvers on the training broom, pretending to dodge bludgers and opposing players as he raced toward the goals. I'm going to try out for the Quidditch team when I go to Hogwarts, he announced after a particularly satisfying practice session. Do first years ever make the team? Dobby shook his head. Not usually. First years isn't even allowed their own broomsticks. Harry looked crestfallen for a moment, then shrugged. Well, maybe they'll make an exception for me if I'm good enough. This confident assertion, delivered without arrogance but with simple self-belief, exemplified the person Harry was becoming, quietly determined, willing to challenge conventions, and increasingly aware of his own capabilities. As autumn arrived and Hogwarts filled with students, Harry's education continued within the safety of the room of requirement. His magical abilities developed in increasingly unusual ways, blending wizard techniques with house-elf approaches and even innovations of his own devising. One rainy October afternoon, as Harry practiced a color-changing charm on various objects, he grew frustrated with the limitation of changing only one item at a time. "There's got to be a way to change everything at once," he muttered, looking around at the collection of feathers, cups, and small toys arranged before him. Dobby, who was folding laundry nearby, glanced up. "Wizard magic works on one thing at a time because wizard focuses through wand. House elves can affect many things because our magic spreads out from our whole body." Harry considered this difference thoughtfully. "So if I think about my magic coming not just from my hand but from all of me." He closed his eyes, concentrating on the feeling of magic that had become familiar over years of practice, the tingling warmth that usually gathered in his chest before flowing down his arm to his fingertips. This time, instead of channeling it to his hand, he imagined it expanding outward in all directions, enveloping the entire table of objects. "Calaveria," he incanted, picturing a vibrant blue. When he opened his eyes, not only had every object on the table turned bright blue, but so had the table itself, the surrounding floor, and even Dobby's pillowcase tunic. "Oops," Harry said, staring wide-eyed at the blue house elf. Dobby examined his now blue hands with a mixture of surprise and pride. "Harry Potter is inventing new ways to do spells. This is being very advanced magic. Can you fix it?" Harry asked, gesturing at the blue-tinted room around them. With a snap of his fingers, Dobby restored everything to its original colors. "Harry Potter must be careful with experimental magic," he cautioned. "Results can be unpredictable." This incident marked the beginning of Harry's more creative approach to magic. Rather than simply learning established spells, he began exploring ways to modify them, combine them, or execute them differently. Not all experiments were successful, some produced no effects at all, while others created unexpected and occasionally problematic results. Once, attempting to merge a warming charm with an illumination spell to create a hovering heat source, Harry accidentally set fire to his workbench. Another time, trying to extend the duration of a simple animation charm on a toy soldier, he inadvertently made it virtually indestructible and autonomous. The soldier marched around their living quarters for 3 days, resisting all attempts to cancel the spell, before finally reverting to normal. "Harry Potter has too much power for such young wizard," Dobby observed after that incident. "Harry Potter needs to learn control before creativity." Recognizing the wisdom in this advice, Harry refocused on mastering basic techniques before attempting further innovations. He practiced casting standard charms with minimal verbal components, reduced wand movements, and eventually, no wand at all. By his 8th birthday, he could perform most first-year Hogwarts charms wandlessly, though with varying levels of consistency. This magical development wasn't the only area in which Harry was growing. His voracious reading had expanded his vocabulary far beyond that of typical children his age. His understanding of mathematics, astronomy, magical theory, and history, both wizard and muggle, was remarkably advanced, thanks to the room's ever-expanding educational resources and Dobby's supplementary teachings. Physically, too, Harry was flourishing. Regular exercise, proper nutrition, a stark contrast to his early years with the Dursleys, and magically enhanced games had transformed the once scrawny toddler into a healthy, athletic child. He remained somewhat small for his age, a legacy of his early malnutrition that even magic couldn't fully correct, but he was strong, fast, and coordinated. The only area in which Harry lagged behind what might be expected was social development. Despite Dobby's devoted companionship and the occasional visits from Hokey before her passing, Harry had minimal experience interacting with other children or even adults beyond the house elves. As his awareness of this deficit grew, Harry began asking more questions about relationships and social dynamics. "How do you make friends?" he asked Dobby one evening. How do you know if someone likes you or not? Dobby struggled with these questions, his own social experiences limited to interactions with other house elves and the often cruel treatment from wizard masters. Dobby thinks. Dobby thinks friends is people who is kind to each other, who helps each other, who enjoys being together. Harry nodded thoughtfully. But how do you start? When I go to Hogwarts, everyone else will already know how to talk to people. What if I say the wrong thing? What if nobody likes me? Everyone will like Harry Potter, Dobby assured him. Harry Potter is famous and kind and smart. But I don't want people to like me because I'm famous, Harry protested. I want them to like me for me. This concern became increasingly prominent as Harry's 8th year progressed into his 9th. He began asking for more stories about his parents and their friends, trying to understand how they had formed the close bonds that Dobby described. Your father James Potter had 3 close friends at Hogwarts, Dobby told him, recounting tales he'd heard from other house elves who had worked at the school during that era. Sirius Black, Remus Lupin, and Peter Pettigrew. They called themselves the Marauders and was always planning pranks and adventures. And my mum? Did she have good friends too? Lily Evans was friends with many students, not just in Gryffindor but in other houses too. She was especially close to a Slytherin boy at first, though Dobby is not remembering his name. Harry absorbed these stories eagerly, building mental images of the parents he couldn't remember and the social world he would soon enter. To practice social interactions, he began role-playing conversations with animated toys, assigning them different personalities and responding to scenarios he invented. The Room, sensing this new developmental need, gradually introduced more complex social simulation options. Books appeared that told stories of friendship, conflict resolution, and school dynamics. Enchanted artifacts emerged that could engage Harry in simple conversations or games requiring negotiation and collaboration. One such artifact, a magical chess set with pieces that offered advice and commentary beyond the standard wizard chess declarations, became one of Harry's favorite companions. The Black King, a tiny crowned figure with a surprisingly deep voice, took on the role of mentor, teaching Harry not just chess strategy but broader lessons about leadership and decision-making. Sacrifices must sometimes be made, the king pronounced one afternoon after Harry had protected a pawn at the expense of tactical advantage. But one must always question whether the sacrifice is necessary or merely expedient. Harry's brow furrowed as he considered this. What's the difference? A necessary sacrifice serves a greater purpose that cannot be achieved otherwise. An expedient sacrifice merely makes one's path easier at another's expense. These philosophical discussions, odd as they might have seemed with tiny chess pieces, helped fill gaps in Harry's social education. Combined with the books, role-playing exercises, and Dobby's own guidance, they prepared him as best they could for the complex social world he would eventually enter. By Harry's 9th birthday, the isolation that had once felt so secure began to chafe. Their midnight excursions, resumed after the mysterious figure incident had faded from memory, no longer satisfied his curiosity about the world beyond the Room of Requirement. I want to see Hogsmeade, he declared one evening. You've told me about the village, but I've never even seen it from a distance. Dobby's ears drooped anxiously. Hogsmeade is being too risky, Harry Potter. Too many wizards and witches who might recognize Harry Potter even with disillusionment charms. What about Diagon Alley? Or any Muggle town? I haven't been anywhere except here in Privet Drive, and I barely remember that. This conversation repeated with increasing frequency as Harry's 9th year progressed. His restlessness grew alongside his magical abilities and intellectual development, creating a young wizard who was simultaneously remarkably advanced and noticeably inexperienced. Dobby recognized the problem but struggled to find solutions that wouldn't risk exposing their arrangement. He began bringing newspapers and magazines from the outside world, both wizard publications like the Daily Prophet and Muggle periodicals he discreetly collected. These provided Harry with glimpses of current events, fashion, and culture beyond their sanctuary. The house elf also increased his efforts to describe the outside world in vivid detail, recounting his own observations from Malfoy Manor and other locations he visited while performing his duties. Diagon Alley is filled with shops of every kind, he told Harry, embellishing his descriptions with animated gestures. Wizards and witches in colorful robes is bustling about, owls is flying overhead delivering packages, and the buildings is all leaning at funny angles like they would fall over without magic holding them up. Harry drank in these descriptions, pressing for more details and asking questions that Dobby sometimes struggled to answer. What do the shops smell like? What games do wizard children play when they're together? How do people greet each other when they meet on the street? One unusually warm spring day, when Harry was 9.5, Dobby made a surprising concession to his growing restlessness. If Harry Potter promises to follow all safety rules, perhaps we could visit the shore of the Great Lake tonight. The giant squid sometimes comes to the surface on warm evenings. Harry's face lit up with excitement. Really? We can go outside? Just for a short time, Dobby cautioned. And Harry Potter must stay disillusioned and right beside Dobby the whole time. That night, under a crescent moon, they slipped out of the castle and made their way down to the lakeshore. The water gleamed silver in the moonlight, its surface occasionally disturbed by ripples from unseen creatures below. Harry, invisible but for a faint shimmer when he moved, stood at the water's edge, breathing deeply of the fresh night air. It smells different out here than in the castle, he observed quietly. Wilder. Dobby nodded, keeping a watchful eye on their surroundings. Nature has its own magic, different from wizard or house elf magic. They waited in comfortable silence, listening to the gentle lapping of water against the shore and the distant hoots of owls from the forest edge. After about 20 minutes, a massive tentacle broke the surface of the lake, rising at least 15 feet into the air before curling in what almost appeared to be a wave. The squid is saying hello, Dobby whispered. It senses our magic. Harry waved back, though he remained invisible. Hello, he called softly. It's nice to meet you. The tentacle curled again before slipping back beneath the water, leaving expanding ripples in its wake. The giant squid has lived in the lake since the founder's time, Dobby explained as they watched the water settle. Some say Rowena Ravenclaw brought it here as a guardian for students who swim in the lake. Harry was about to respond when a twig snapped in the forest behind them. Dobby tensed, grabbing Harry's invisible arm. Someone is coming, he hissed. We must go. Before Harry could even register alarm, Dobby had brought them back to the room of requirement with a quiet pop. Who was it? Harry asked, breathing hard from the sudden departure. Dobby did not see, the house elf admitted, his large eyes wide. But we cannot take risks, Harry Potter. Not when we is so close to Harry Potter's Hogwarts time. This close call reinforced Dobby's caution, and their excursions became less frequent and more carefully planned. Each venture outside the room was preceded by extensive safety discussions and the establishment of emergency protocols. Despite these increased precautions, Harry's 10th birthday arrived with a sense of impending change. Only one more year until his Hogwarts letter would arrive. Only one more year of hiding, of secret learning, of life with only Dobby for company. I got you something special, Dobby announced on the morning of Harry's birthday, presenting him with a small, carefully wrapped package. Dobby has been saving for this. Inside was a simple silver wristband engraved with protective runes. It is a wizard-made protection band, Dobby explained. Not as strong as proper wizard protection spells, but it will help shield Harry Potter from minor hexes and detect harmful potions in food or drink. Harry slipped it onto his wrist, feeling a warm tingle as the magic activated. It's brilliant, Dobby. Thank you. Harry Potter will need extra protection when he goes to Hogwarts properly, Dobby said seriously. Not all wizards will be kind to Harry Potter. This was a somber note to introduce on his birthday, but Harry nodded, understanding the concern. Over the years, Dobby had gradually shared more about the darker aspects of wizarding society, the prejudices, the political factions, the lingering influence of Voldemort's followers. Some wizard families who follow the Dark Lord still has great power, Dobby had explained. They is pretending they was under spells or forced to serve, but many chose to follow him willingly. Like the Malfoys? Harry had asked, familiar with Dobby's masters from his many stories. Dobby had twisted his ears anxiously before nodding. Dobby should not speak ill of his masters, but, yes. The Malfoys and other old families, the Knots, the Crabs, the Goyles, the Parkinsons, they believes in pure blood supremacy. They will not like Harry Potter, who defeated their master. These warnings had given Harry a more nuanced understanding of the world he would enter. The Wizarding Society wasn't simply divided into good and evil, but contained many shades of belief, prejudice, and political alignment. "I'll be careful," Harry promised, touching the protection band. "I'll remember everything you've taught me." To lighten the mood, Dobby had arranged a special birthday surprise. That evening, under cover of disillusionment charms and with extra precautions in place, they made their way to the astronomy tower to watch a meteor shower that coincided with Harry's birthday. "The Centaur says stars falling on a birthday is very lucky," Dobby told him as they settled in a dark corner of the tower, invisible to any casual observer. The night was perfect, clear and warm, with no breeze to carry sounds that might reveal their presence. As the meteors began streaking across the sky, Harry gasped in wonder. "It's like the stars are celebrating with me," he whispered. Dobby nodded, his tennis ball eyes reflecting the celestial display. The heavens is acknowledging Harry Potter's special day. They watched in companionable silence as dozens, then hundreds of meteors illuminated the night. It was, Harry thought, perhaps the most perfect moment of his young life, sitting beneath the infinite sky, magic in his veins and all around him, with the loyal friend who had become his family. The peaceful moment was shattered by the sudden appearance of Professor McGonagall, who stepped onto the tower platform with her wand illuminated. "Who's there?" she called sharply. "Show yourself at once." Harry froze, hardly daring to breathe. Beside him, Dobby trembled but maintained the disillusionment charm that kept them hidden. McGonagall moved further onto the platform, her wand raised. "I heard voices. Reveal yourselves immediately, or I shall be forced to use detection spells." Dobby tugged urgently at Harry's sleeve, signaling they needed to leave. Before McGonagall could cast any spells that might penetrate their concealment, Dobby brought them back to safety once more. "That was close," Harry breathed as they reappeared in the room of requirement. "Do you think she suspected it was us?" Dobby shook his head. Professor McGonagall would be thinking it was students out after curfew. She would not be imagining Harry Potter and Dobby watching meteors. Nevertheless, the incident reinforced their vulnerability. With only a year remaining before Harry would officially enter the wizarding world, they couldn't risk discovery that might separate them or send Harry back to the Dursleys. Their final year of hiding would need to be their most cautious yet. But it would also be their most important, as they prepared Harry not just magically and intellectually but emotionally and socially for his emergence from isolation. In the months following Harry's 10th birthday, their educational routine intensified. The room of requirement, seeming to sense the approaching transition, provided increasingly advanced materials focused not just on first-year Hogwarts subjects but on wizarding culture, etiquette, and contemporary issues. Newspapers and magazines appeared more regularly, keeping Harry informed about current events in the wizarding world. Books on wizard genealogy helped him understand the complex relationships between the old families that still dominated magical Britain. Guides to Hogwarts traditions prepared him for the school culture he would soon join. "You'll need to pretend you don't know as much as you do," Dobby advised one afternoon as Harry practiced a particularly complex charm well beyond first-year level. "Other students will be suspicious if Harry Potter knows advanced magic already." Harry nodded, though the idea of hiding his abilities frustrated him. "I'll have to act like I'm learning everything for the first time, won't I?" "For some things, yes," Dobby agreed. "But Harry Potter can still excel without revealing all his secrets." This strategy became a key part of their preparation, deciding what knowledge and abilities Harry could safely demonstrate and what needed to remain hidden, at least initially. They developed cover stories for his unusual education, I read a lot of books, and I practiced basic spells with a toy wand, became standard explanations, and rehearsed answers to questions he might face about his years away from the wizarding world. If someone asks where Harry Potter has been, what does Harry Potter say? Dobby would quiz. I was raised by distant relatives of my mother who preferred privacy, Harry would recite. They homeschooled me and kept me away from the wizarding world until it was time for Hogwarts. This fabrication, while not entirely truthful, avoided mentioning both the Dursleys and Dobby's role in Harry's upbringing. It was plausible enough to satisfy casual curiosity while vague enough to discourage deeper probing. As their final winter in isolation approached, Harry's magical abilities reached new heights. His wandless casting had become so reliable that Dobby worried he might accidentally reveal this unusual skill when he arrived at Hogwarts. Harry Potter must practice using wand movements again, Dobby insisted. Harry Potter must remember to act like other first years. To facilitate this readjustment, the room provided a selection of sticks enchanted to respond like actual wands, allowing Harry to practice the more traditional casting techniques he would be expected to use at school. It felt like a step backward after years of advancing beyond such basics, but Harry recognized the necessity. I don't want people asking questions we can't answer, he acknowledged. Their physical explorations of the castle became even rarer, limited to only the most isolated areas during holiday periods when few people remained at Hogwarts. Instead, they relied more heavily on the room's ability to transform itself into replicas of different parts of the castle, allowing Harry to familiarize himself with locations he would need to navigate as a student. This is the potions classroom in the dungeons, Dobby would explain as the room reconfigured into a perfect replica of Professor Snape's domain. Professor Snape is being very strict. Harry Potter must be extra careful in his class. Why? Harry asked, examining the bubbling cauldrons and shelves of ingredients the room had conjured. Dobby's ears drooped slightly. Professor Snape did not like James Potter. They was enemies at school. Some house elf says Professor Snape might be hard on Harry Potter because of this. Harry frowned, processing this information. That's not fair. I'm not my dad. Many wizards will see James Potter when they look at Harry Potter, Dobby said gently. Harry Potter looks very much like his father, except for my eyes, Harry finished. I have my mother's eyes. You've told me. This physical resemblance to his parents was both a source of pride and concern for Harry. He liked knowing he carried visible connections to the people who had loved him enough to die protecting him. But he worried about living up to the expectations that might come with looking so much like the famous James and Lily Potter. What if I can't be what everyone expects, he asked Dobby one snowy evening as they sat by the fire. What if I disappoint people? Dobby reached over to pat Harry's hand. Harry Potter can only be Harry Potter. Not what others is expecting. And Harry Potter is already special, not because he is the boy who lived, but because he is kind and brave and clever. These reassurances helped, but as his 11th birthday drew closer, Harry's anxiety about entering the wizarding world grew alongside his excitement. He was eager to experience everything he'd spent years reading and hearing about, but the prospect of leaving the safety and predictability of life with Dobby was increasingly daunting. To ease this transition anxiety, they began planning for how their relationship would continue once Harry became an official Hogwarts student. Harry Potter will be living in dormitory with other Gryffindor boys, Dobby explained. But Dobby can still visit Harry Potter in secret, and Harry Potter can come to the room of requirement when Harry Potter needs quiet or special training. But you'll still be bound to the Malfoys, Harry pointed out, a familiar frustration creeping into his voice. After years of learning about house elf slavery from Dobby's perspective, he found the practice increasingly intolerable. Yes, Dobby acknowledged. But Dobby has managed for 7 years to serve Malfoys and care for Harry Potter. Dobby can continue. Harry wasn't satisfied with this compromise, but he recognized that for now, there was no alternative. One day, he promised himself, he would find a way to free Dobby from the Malfoys. One day, house elves would have choices like wizards did. As spring arrived, bringing with it increasingly frequent thunderstorms that reminded Harry of the night he'd seen the strange figure years earlier. Their preparation intensified. Harry had mastered a comprehensive magical education far beyond what most wizard children receive before Hogwarts, combining theoretical knowledge with practical skills and the unique magical perspective that came from being raised by a house elf. He could perform most first and second-year spells wandlessly, brew simple potions with careful precision, identify dozens of magical plants and creatures, and navigate the complex history and politics of the wizarding world. More importantly, he had developed a strong moral compass, an appreciation for magical beings of all kinds, and a determination to forge his own path rather than simply fulfilling others' expectations. "Harry Potter is ready," Dobby declared one evening in late May, watching as Harry successfully completed a particularly challenging transfiguration exercise. "When Harry Potter's letter comes, Harry Potter will be the best prepared first-year Hogwarts has ever seen." Harry grinned, pleased by the praise but also struck by a sudden realization. "We've never talked about how we'll handle the letter. Won't it be addressed to the Room of Requirement? Won't that give us away?" Dobby's eyes widened as he considered this complication they'd somehow overlooked. Hogwarts letters is finding students wherever they are, but the Room of Requirement is being unplottable, hidden from all detection. "So my letter might not find me at all," Harry concluded, alarmed by this possibility. "Or worse, it might try to find me but alert Dumbledore to where I've been hiding all these years." This potential crisis required immediate planning. After careful consideration, they developed a strategy. As Harry's 11th birthday approached, they would begin spending time in a rarely used classroom on the 5th floor during the summer holiday when the castle was nearly empty. The location was chosen for its proximity to the Room of Requirement, allowing quick retreat if necessary, and its dusty, abandoned state, suggesting no one had used it in years. "The letter should find Harry Potter there," Dobby reasoned. "Then Harry Potter can pretend he has just arrived at Hogwarts early, perhaps to meet with Headmaster Dumbledore before term begins." It wasn't a perfect plan. There would be difficult questions about where Harry had been for the past 8 years and who had raised him, but it was their best option for managing the inevitable transition from hiding to public life. As June faded into July, and Harry's 11th birthday grew imminent, a new tension filled their days. They began visiting the abandoned classroom for increasing periods, careful to leave no trace of their presence but establishing it as a location associated with Harry. During these sessions, they finalized their cover story and rehearsed responses to likely questions. Harry practiced speaking about his fictional upbringing with distant relatives, carefully avoiding details that could be verified or disproven. Dobby advised on wizard customs and expectations Harry would encounter, filling in social gaps that books couldn't address. When wizard children meets for first time, they often asks about Quidditch teams and families, Dobby explained. Harry Potter should know about Quidditch teams but can say Harry Potter never had chance to see professional matches. These last-minute preparations filled their days, but their nights were increasingly disturbed by Harry's dreams. As his birthday approached, he began having vivid nightmares about his parents' deaths, green light, a high cold laugh, and his mother's screams. He would wake shaking, his scar burning, calling out for people he couldn't remember. "It's getting closer," he told Dobby after a particularly bad night. "Not just my birthday, but something else. Something to do with him. With Voldemort." Dobby shuddered at the name but didn't scold Harry for using it. "Does Harry Potter's scar hurt?" Harry nodded, rubbing the lightning-shaped mark on his forehead. "It feels angry. Like it knows things are about to change." These episodes worried Dobby deeply. The connection between Harry's scar and the Dark Lord was something they discussed over the years, but neither fully understood its nature or implications. "Perhaps when Harry Potter meets Professor Dumbledore, Harry Potter can ask about the scar," Dobby suggested. Harry nodded, though he looked uncertain. "Do you think Dumbledore will be angry that I've been hiding? That we didn't tell him where I was?" "Headmaster Dumbledore is a complicated wizard," Dobby replied carefully. "He is being wise and powerful, but he also makes decisions for others without always explaining why. He decided Harry Potter should live with the Dursleys even though they was cruel. This ambivalence toward Dumbledore, respect for his abilities mingled with wariness about his decisions, had been a consistent theme in their discussions. Unlike many in the wizarding world who viewed the headmaster with unqualified reverence, Harry had developed a more nuanced perspective, influenced by Dobby's observations and his own independent thinking. "I'll be polite but careful," Harry decided. "I won't tell him everything right away. I'll see if he's someone I can trust first." As July 31st, Harry's 11th birthday, drew nearer, the frequency of his nightmares increased, as did their intensity. On the night of July 30th, he had the most vivid dream yet. He was in a strange room with a mirror at its center, and reflected in the mirror was not his own face but a pale, snake-like visage with glaring red eyes. He woke screaming, his scar feeling like it was on fire. Dobby rushed to his side, applying a cooling cloth to his forehead and offering soothing words. "It's coming," Harry gasped when he could finally speak. "Something bad is coming, Dobby. Not tomorrow, but soon. He's getting stronger." Dobby's enormous eyes filled with fear. "The Dark Lord? Harry Potter is dreaming of the Dark Lord?" Harry nodded, still pressing the cloth to his burning scar. I think he's trying to come back. And I think it has something to do with Hogwarts." This alarming prediction cast a shadow over what should have been a celebratory day. As July 30th dawned, Harry's 11th birthday just hours away, they made final preparations for receiving his Hogwarts letter and the dramatic change it would bring to their lives. "Harry Potter should spend most of day in the classroom we prepared," Dobby advised. "Hogwarts letters usually arrives in morning, but sometimes is delayed." Harry nodded, trying to focus on the practical matters at hand rather than the ominous dreams that plagued his sleep. "And if someone comes with the letter? If Dumbledore or McGonagall delivers it personally? Harry Potter will say he has been waiting to meet them, that Harry Potter's guardian suggested coming early to get acquainted with Hogwarts before term starts." "And where is this mysterious guardian?" Harry asked, rehearsing potential questions. "Returned home after bringing Harry Potter to Hogwarts," Dobby replied, reciting the agreed-upon story. "Harry Potter has permission to stay at Castle until term begins because of special circumstances." They had prepared as thoroughly as possible, anticipating questions and planning responses. Yet as Harry gathered the few possessions he would take to the fifth-floor classroom, a small bag with a change of clothes, the protection bracelet Dobby had given him, and a well-read copy of Hogwarts, a History, he felt woefully unprepared for the reality of stepping into the wizarding world after 8 years of seclusion. "I'm scared, Dobby," he admitted quietly. "Not of magic or classes or even Dark Lords. I'm scared of people. Of not knowing how to be normal." Dobby set aside the lunch he was packing for Harry and came to stand before him, placing his long-fingered hands on Harry's shoulders. "Harry Potter is not being normal, and that is good thing. Harry Potter is special, not because of famous scar, but because Harry Potter sees all magical beings as equals, because Harry Potter is kind even when no one is watching, because Harry Potter is brave enough to be different." These words, spoken with such conviction by the being who had raised him, steadied Harry's nerves. He took a deep breath and nodded. "I'm ready. Or as ready as I'll ever be." They shared one last meal in the room of requirement, reminiscing about their years together and speculating about the adventures that lay ahead. Then, with final checks of their preparations, Harry donned his disillusionment charm and slipped out of the room that had been his home for 8 years, making his way to the dusty fifth-floor classroom that would be the stage for his re-entry into the wizarding world. As he settled onto a windowsill to wait, looking out over the sun-drenched Hogwarts grounds, he felt a curious mix of endings and beginnings. One chapter of his life, secret, sheltered, but filled with love and learning, was concluding. Another, public, challenging, but rich with possibilities, was about to begin. Whatever came next, Hogwarts letter, reunions with the wizarding world, new friends, old enemies, even the looming threat of Voldemort, Harry Potter was as prepared as a boy raised by a house elf in a magical hidden room could possibly be. And somewhere in the castle, invisible and watchful, Dobby waited too, ready to continue protecting the boy he'd raised, no matter what the wizarding world might throw at them. Chapter 3. Stepping into the light. Harry sat on the dusty windowsill of the abandoned classroom, watching the sun rise over the Hogwarts grounds. Today was his 11th birthday, the day everything would change. His leg bounced nervously as he scanned the sky for owls. Any minute now, his Hogwarts letter would arrive, and the life he'd built with Dobby over the past 8 years would transform forever. He'd been in position since dawn, the small bag containing his meager possessions tucked beneath the windowsill. The classroom itself looked properly abandoned, dusty desks stacked against one wall, cobwebs in the corners, a faint musty smell hanging in the air. Nobody would suspect he'd only arrived minutes ago rather than having traveled from some distant location. A flutter of wings caught his attention. His heart jumped into his throat as a tawny owl swooped toward his window, an envelope clutched in its beak. This was it. The owl landed on the sill beside him, regarding Harry with intelligent amber eyes. It extended its leg, to which the envelope was now attached, and gave a soft hoot. With trembling fingers, Harry untied the letter. The envelope was heavy, made of yellowish parchment, and addressed in emerald green ink, Mr. H. Potter, the abandoned classroom, 5th floor, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. He flipped it over, seeing the purple wax seal bearing the Hogwarts coat of arms, a lion, eagle, badger, and snake surrounding a large letter H. Harry broke the seal, pulled out the letter, and read, Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry Headmaster, Albus Dumbledore, Order of Merlin, First Class, Grand Source. CHF, Warlock, Supreme Mugwump, International Confide, of Wizards. Dear Mr. Potter, we are pleased to inform you that you have been accepted at Hogwarts School of Witchcraft and Wizardry. Please find enclosed a list of all necessary books and equipment. Term begins on September 1st. We await your owl by no later than July 31st. Given your current location, please remain where you are. A member of staff will be with you shortly. Yours sincerely, Minerva McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. The last sentence made Harry's stomach clench. They were coming now. He thought he'd have more time to prepare. He quickly scanned the supply list in the second page, confirming it matched what Dobby had told him to expect, then looked back at the owl who remained perched on the windowsill. Thank you, he said, remembering his manners. The owl hooted once more before taking flight. Harry pocketed the letter and jumped to his feet. He needed to look like he'd just arrived at Hogwarts after a long journey. He mussed his hair a bit more, not that it needed the help, rubbed some dust on his cheeks, and tried to steady his breathing. You can do this, he whispered to himself. Just stick to the story. He didn't have long to wait. Less than 10 minutes after the owl's departure, footsteps echoed in the corridor outside. Harry positioned himself near the window, as if he'd been watching the grounds while waiting. The classroom door swung open to reveal a tall, stern-looking witch with black hair pulled back in a tight bun. She wore emerald green robes and square spectacles, and her sharp eyes widened when they landed on Harry. Mr. Potter, she said, her voice betraying the slightest tremor despite her composed expression. Professor McGonagall? Harry asked, using his knowledge of Hogwarts staff while trying to sound appropriately uncertain. The witch stepped into the classroom, her gaze never leaving Harry's face. Yes, I am Professor McGonagall, Deputy Headmistress. She paused, seemingly collecting herself. Mr. Potter, your presence at Hogwarts is unexpected. The magical quill that addresses Hogwarts letters has been unable to locate you for years. Harry nodded, feigning mild surprise. Oh, I suppose that makes sense. My guardians were quite private people. They probably had wards to prevent tracking. Your guardians? McGonagall's eyebrows rose sharply. Not the Dursleys, then. No, ma'am. I haven't lived with the Dursleys since I was 3. This, at least, was completely true. The professor's lips thinned to a tight line. I see. And these, guardians of yours, they brought you to Hogwarts today? Harry nodded again, sticking to the story he and Dobby had rehearsed countless times. Yes, Professor. They felt it would be good for me to get acquainted with Hogwarts before term begins, especially since. He hesitated, then continued in a softer voice, well, since I'm Harry Potter and things might be a bit overwhelming once all the students arrive. McGonagall studied him carefully, and Harry fought the urge to fidget under her scrutinizing gaze. These guardians, she said finally. Where are they now? They've gone home, Professor. They said the headmaster would understand my special circumstances and allow me to stay until term begins. Harry met her eyes steadily, projecting innocent confidence. Did they indeed? McGonagall's tone was dry. And do these mysterious guardians have names, Mr. Potter? Here was the tricky part. Harry and Dobby had prepared a vague explanation that would be difficult to verify. They preferred to remain private, Professor. They were distant relations on my mother's side who took me in after what happened to my parents. They homeschooled me and kept me away from the wizarding world until now. He glanced down at his feet, then back up. They said it was safer that way. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. I see. Well, Mr. Potter, I believe the headmaster will want to speak with you directly. If you'll follow me. Harry grabbed his small bag and followed the professor from the classroom. As they walked through the corridors, he forced himself to look around with appropriate wonder, though he knew these halls intimately from years of midnight explorations. Hogwarts is amazing, he commented, gazing up at the moving staircases with practiced awe. Indeed it is, McGonagall replied, watching his reactions closely. Have your guardians told you much about the school? Some, Harry said carefully. I've read Hogwarts, a History several times. It's my favorite book. This elicited a small smile from the stern professor. A fine choice. Perhaps you'll be in my house, Gryffindor. Your parents were both Gryffindors, you know. Yes, I know, Harry said, then quickly added, my guardians told me. They said my father was an excellent Quidditch player. The best chaser Gryffindor had seen in many years, McGonagall confirmed, a nostalgic glint in her eyes. And your mother was an exceptional witch, particularly gifted in charms and potions. They continued through the castle, McGonagall occasionally pointing out features of interest that Harry pretended not to know about. Finally, they reached a stone gargoyle guarding a spiral staircase. Chocolate Frog, McGonagall announced, and the gargoyle leapt aside, revealing the moving staircase behind it. Harry followed her onto the stairs, which spiraled upward like an escalator, bringing them to a polished oak door with a brass knocker. McGonagall rapped on the door, which swung open to reveal a large, circular room filled with strange silver instruments, portraits of sleeping former headmasters, and shelves of books. Behind an enormous claw-footed desk sat Albus Dumbledore. Harry had seen the headmaster from afar during his secret explorations of the castle, but never this close. The ancient wizard had a long silver beard that tucked into his belt, half-moon spectacles perched on a crooked nose, and twinkling blue eyes that seemed to look right through Harry as they entered. Ah, Minerva, Dumbledore said pleasantly, and young Mr. Potter as well. What a delightful surprise. Headmaster, the Hogwarts quill finally located Mr. Potter, McGonagall explained. He was already here, in an unused classroom on the 5th floor. He claims to have been brought to Hogwarts by his guardians, not the Dursleys, who have apparently raised him since he was 3 years old. Dumbledore's eyebrows rose slightly, though his pleasant expression didn't waver. Indeed. How fascinating. He turned his penetrating gaze to Harry. Please, Mr. Potter, take a seat and tell us more about these guardians of yours. Harry sat in the chair facing Dumbledore's desk, mentally reviewing the story he and Dobby had created. There's not much to tell, sir, he began, adopting a respectful but not overly deferential tone. They took me from the Dursleys when I was very young. I don't remember much about it, but they told me I wasn't being treated well there. Dumbledore's eyes lost some of their twinkle. That is concerning news, Harry. The Dursleys were your mother's sister and her family, your only blood relatives. There were important magical protections in place while you lived with them. Harry nodded, having prepared for this objection. My guardians mentioned something about that, sir. They said they established different protections, ones that kept me hidden from everyone, including you. They felt it was safer that way, considering who I am and that there might still be dark wizards who would want to hurt me. A reasonable concern, Dumbledore acknowledged. Though I must admit, I am troubled by not knowing where you've been all these years, or with whom. They were good to me, Harry said firmly. They taught me about magic, about my parents, about Hogwarts. They made sure I was safe and happy. Yet they chose not to identify themselves, even now. Dumbledore's tone was mild, but Harry sensed the sharp question beneath. They're very private people, sir. They felt their connection to me would make them targets. Harry met Dumbledore's eyes steadily. They said what matters isn't who raised me, but that I'm here now, ready to learn at Hogwarts like my parents did. Dumbledore and McGonagall exchanged a glance that Harry couldn't quite interpret. Then Dumbledore smiled gently. Well, Harry, while I admit to considerable curiosity about these mysterious guardians, I am primarily concerned with your well-being. You appear to be healthy and well cared for, which is what matters most. Though I must ask, these guardians simply left you here. A child of 11, alone in a castle. Harry shifted slightly in his chair. They knew there were professors here, sir. And they said I'm old enough now to begin some independence. They'll check on me, of course. Just, discreetly. I see. Dumbledore steepled his fingers, regarding Harry thoughtfully. It seems we find ourselves in an unusual situation. Term doesn't begin for another month, but as you're already here. He turned to McGonagall. Minerva, what do you think about allowing young Mr. Potter to stay at Hogwarts until term begins? Perhaps in the Gryffindor dormitory, as I suspect that's where he'll end up. McGonagall pursed her lips. It's highly irregular, Albus. But considering the circumstances and who he is, yes, I suppose we could make an arrangement. We would need to ensure proper supervision, of course. Excellent, Dumbledore beamed. Harry, you'll stay in Gryffindor Tower for now, though understand that the sorting ceremony might place you in a different house when term begins. Thank you, sir, Harry said, genuinely grateful. This was working out better than he'd dared hope. Now, about your school supplies, Dumbledore continued. Do your guardians intend to provide them, or will you need assistance? They left me money for supplies, Harry replied. They said I should visit Diagon Alley to purchase everything on the list. Splendid. Perhaps Hagrid could accompany you. Our gamekeeper, Dumbledore explained, seeing Harry's carefully crafted look of confusion. He's been quite eager to meet you, actually. He was the one who brought you to the Dursleys after your parents died. I'd like that, Harry said sincerely. From Dobby's stories, he knew Hagrid had been kind to his parents. Excellent. We'll make arrangements for tomorrow, then. Dumbledore smiled broadly. For today, Professor McGonagall will show you to Gryffindor Tower and help you get settled. I imagine you must be tired from your journey. Harry recognized the dismissal and stood, shouldering his small bag. Thank you, Professor Dumbledore, Professor McGonagall. As McGonagall led him from the office, Harry fought to control his racing heart. They hadn't believed everything, that much was obvious, but they hadn't rejected his story outright either. For now, at least, he was safely established at Hogwarts without having to reveal Dobby's role in his upbringing. Once they were back in the corridor, McGonagall gave him another appraising look. Mr. Potter, while the headmaster seems content to respect your privacy regarding these guardians of yours, I hope you understand our concern. Many people have been searching for you since you disappeared from your aunt and uncle's home. Harry nodded soberly. I understand, Professor. But I promise I was safe and well cared for. My guardians just wanted to protect me from the fame and attention until I was old enough to handle it. McGonagall's expression softened slightly. A reasonable precaution, perhaps. Your father would have relished the attention, but your mother, she might have made a similar choice for you. This comparison to his mother warmed Harry immensely. Thank you, Professor. That means a lot. They continued through the castle until they reached the portrait of the fat lady guarding the entrance to Gryffindor Tower. Fortuna Major, McGonagall said, and the portrait swung open to reveal the round hole behind. That's the current password, Mr. Potter. It will change once term begins, of course. Harry followed her into the Gryffindor common room, a cozy, circular room full of squashy armchairs. Though he'd seen it before during his secret explorations, he made sure to look around with appropriate wonder. This is brilliant, he said honestly. McGonagall's lips twitched in what might have been a suppressed smile. The boys' dormitories are up the staircase to your right. As you're the only student currently in residence, you'll have the first-year dormitory to yourself for now. The house elves will provide your meals, either here in the common room or in the Great Hall, as you prefer. Harry nodded, careful not to react to the mention of house elves. Thank you, Professor. I'll leave you to get settled. Hagrid will meet you tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock in the entrance hall to take you to Diagon Alley. She paused, then added in a slightly softer tone, It's good to have you at Hogwarts, Mr. Potter. Your parents would be proud. After she left, Harry stood alone in the middle of the common room, a strange mixture of emotions washing over him. He'd done it, he'd successfully emerged from hiding and established himself at Hogwarts without revealing Dobby's involvement. But now he was separated from the only family he'd known for the past 8 years, alone in a dormitory rather than in the cozy room of requirement with Dobby. He made his way up to the first-year boys' dormitory, finding 5 four-poster beds with deep red velvet curtains. His small bag looked pathetic sitting on one of the beds, a stark reminder of how little he owned compared to what most students would bring. But that would change tomorrow when he visited Diagon Alley. Harry flopped back on the bed, staring up at the canopy. Despite the soft mattress and fine linens, he felt oddly homeless. The room of requirement had been his home for 8 years, transforming to meet his needs, keeping him and Dobby safe from discovery. This dormitory, while comfortable, felt alien. I need to see Dobby, he whispered to the empty room. But how? Professors and staff were now aware of his presence in the castle. He couldn't risk being caught wandering the corridors or entering the room of requirement. He'd need to wait until nightfall, at least, and even then it would be tricky. A soft pop interrupted his thoughts. Harry bolted upright to find Dobby standing beside his bed, ears quivering with emotion. Dobby! Harry exclaimed in a hushed voice. How did you? Dobby has been watching, Harry Potter, the house elf whispered. Dobby heard everything in the headmaster's office. Dobby can move through Hogwarts without being seen. Harry launched himself off the bed and embraced the small elf, who returned the hug fiercely. I was just thinking about how to find you, Harry said, his voice muffled against Dobby's tea towel. Dobby will always find Harry Potter, the elf assured him, his voice thick with emotion. How is Harry Potter feeling? Was Harry Potter convincing to the professors? Harry pulled back, sitting cross-legged on the floor so he could be at eye level with Dobby. I think it went okay. They're suspicious about my guardians, especially Dumbledore, but they didn't push too hard. I'm staying here until term starts, and tomorrow Hagrid is taking me to Diagon Alley for my school supplies. Dobby nodded, his ears flapping with the movement. This is good news. Hagrid is kind wizard who loved Harry Potter's parents. He will not ask too many difficult questions. But how will we meet now, Dobby? I can't risk going to the room of requirement with everyone knowing I'm in the castle. Dobby can come to Harry Potter, the house elf said simply. Hogwarts house elves is always moving around the castle, bringing food, cleaning rooms. No one notices house elves. Dobby can visit Harry Potter here. Relief flooded through Harry. That's brilliant. But wait, won't the other house elves notice you? Won't they wonder why you're at Hogwarts instead of with the Malfoys? Dobby has thought of this, the elf said, looking pleased with himself. Dobby will tell other elves that Master Malfoy has sent Dobby to Hogwarts to watch Harry Potter, to report on the boy who lived. Other elves will not question this, it is the kind of thing Master Malfoy would do. Harry grimaced at the idea of Lucius Malfoy spying on him but had to admit it was a clever cover. That could work. But be careful, okay? I don't want you getting in trouble with the Malfoys. Dobby's expression turned solemn. Dobby is always careful, Harry Potter. But now Harry Potter must be careful too. Harry Potter is out in the open now. Dark wizards will know Harry Potter has returned. I know, Harry sighed. But we planned for this. I've got my protection bracelet, and I know how to defend myself better than most first years. Harry Potter must still pretend not to know too much, Dobby cautioned. If Harry Potter shows unusual magic, wizards will ask questions about who taught Harry Potter. Harry nodded, the reality of his situation sinking in. For years, he'd dreamed of finally joining the wizarding world properly, attending classes, making friends. But now that the moment had arrived, he realized how complicated it would be, constantly guarding his secrets while navigating a world that had expectations of him based solely on his fame. I'll be careful, he promised. But it's going to be hard pretending I don't know things, especially in classes. Harry Potter is smart, Dobby said proudly. Harry Potter will learn to reveal knowledge slowly, at right pace. They spent the next hour planning how they would communicate and meet over the coming weeks. Dobby would visit Harry in Gryffindor Tower during quiet times, and they would use a simple code in case Harry needed to contact Dobby urgently. A house elf named Tippy who worked in the kitchens would act as a messenger, believing she was simply helping the boy who lived with special requests. Finally, Dobby's ears twitched as he sensed something Harry couldn't. Someone is coming to Gryffindor Tower, he whispered. Dobby must go. But Dobby will return tonight after Harry Potter comes back from Diagon Alley. With another soft pop, Dobby disappeared, leaving Harry alone once more. Moments later, he heard the portrait hole open and heavy footsteps crossing the common room. Harry? Yeah, up there, Harry, called a booming voice. Harry descended the stairs to find an enormous man with a wild tangle of black hair and beard filling the common room. Despite never having officially met him, Harry recognized Hagrid immediately from glimpses during his secret explorations of the grounds. Hello, Harry said, stepping into the common room. Are you Hagrid? The giant man's beetle-black eyes crinkled as he beamed through his wild beard. Course I am. Blimey, look at ya. Last time I saw you, ya was just a baby. Ya look like your dad, but ye've got your mum's eyes. Harry smiled genuinely, warmed by Hagrid's obvious affection. Professor Dumbledore said you'd be taking me to Diagon Alley tomorrow. That's right, Hagrid nodded vigorously. But I thought ya might be hungry now. Brought ya some rock cakes I made myself. He held out a napkin containing several lumpy, rock-hard cakes. Thanks, Harry said, accepting them carefully. Dobby had warned him about Hagrid's cooking. That's really kind of you. Snuffing, Hagrid waved a dustbin lid-sized hand dismissively, then peered at Harry curiously. Professor Dumbledore told me ya haven't been livin' with those Dursleys all this time. Said ya had other guardians. Harry nodded, sticking to his story. Yes, since I was about 3. They took care of me, taught me about magic and my parents. But they just dropped ya off here. On your own. Hagrid frowned, his bushy eyebrows drawing together. They knew I'd be safe at Hogwarts, Harry said. And they'll check on me. They're just, private people. Hagrid looked like he had more questions, but to Harry's relief, he didn't press the issue. Well, I'm glad someone was looking after ya. Those Dursleys. He trailed off, shaking his head. Never liked the look of myself. They chatted for a while longer, Hagrid sharing stories about Hogwarts and Harry's parents that aligned with what Dobby had told him over the years. Harry found himself genuinely enjoying the gamekeeper's company, his warmth and straightforward manner were refreshing after the careful questioning from Dumbledore and McGonagall. "We'll head to Diagon Alley first thing tomorrow," Hagrid said as he prepared to leave. "Got lots ter buy. And I still haven't got ya a birthday present." "You don't have to," Harry began, but Hagrid waved him off. "I know I don't have to. Tell ya what, I'll get ya an animal. Not a toad, toads went out of fashion years ago, not a cat, they make me sneeze. I'll get ya an owl. Dead useful, carry your mail and everything. Before Harry could properly thank him, Hagrid had lumbered out through the portrait hole, leaving Harry alone once more but with a warm feeling in his chest. His first real interaction with someone from the wizarding world outside of Dobby had gone surprisingly well. The rest of the day passed quietly. A house elf Harry didn't recognize brought him lunch and dinner in the common room, bowing low and addressing him as Master Harry Potter, Sir, with such reverence that Harry felt deeply uncomfortable. He tried to engage the elf in conversation, but unlike Dobby, this elf seemed terrified by the idea of casual chat with a wizard and disappeared as quickly as possible. After dinner, Harry explored Gryffindor Tower more thoroughly, examining the common room's notice boards, bookshelves, and comfortable seating areas. It was strange being here openly rather than under disillusionment charms during his midnight explorations. Strange, but nice, like finally being invited into a place he'd only peeked at through windows. That night, he slept fitfully in the unfamiliar dormitory. His dreams were a confused jumble of images, Diagon Alley as he imagined it from Dobby's descriptions, the mysterious hooded figure he'd glimpsed years ago at the forest's edge, and a high, cold laugh that made his scar burn even in sleep. "Wake up, Harry Potter. Today Harry Potter gets his wand." Harry jolted awake to find Dobby bouncing excitedly on the foot of his bed. Sunlight streamed through the windows of the Gryffindor dormitory, and for a disorienting moment, Harry couldn't remember where he was. "Dobby," he mumbled, reaching for his glasses. "What time is it?" 7 o'clock, the house elf replied. "Hagrid is meeting Harry Potter at 9. Dobby brought breakfast." He gestured to a tray on Harry's bedside table laden with toast, eggs, bacon, and pumpkin juice. "Thanks, Dobby," Harry said, sitting up and reaching for the juice. "Were you able to talk to the other house elves about your cover story?" Dobby nodded vigorously. "Yes, Harry Potter. Other elves believes Dobby is here on Malfoy business. They is not questioning Dobby's presence." His ears drooped slightly. "Though Dobby must return to Malfoy's tonight. They is having important dinner party tomorrow." Harry nodded, used to Dobby's comings and goings but still disappointed. "That's okay. I'll be busy exploring Diagon Alley today anyway. You can visit when you can. Dobby wants to hear all about Harry Potter's wand when Dobby returns," the elf said earnestly. "And Harry Potter's owl from Hagrid." Harry grinned. "You were eavesdropping yesterday, weren't you?" Dobby's ears twitched guiltily. Dobby was making sure Harry Potter was safe with the big wizard. After breakfast, Dobby helped Harry get ready for his trip to Diagon Alley, offering last-minute advice about various shops and reminding him to visit Gringotts first to access the Potter family vault. "Remember, Harry Potter must act surprised by everything," Dobby cautioned. "Harry Potter has never seen Diagon Alley before." I know," Harry said, though he was genuinely excited about finally seeing the famous wizarding shopping district for himself. "I'll be appropriately amazed by everything." At 8:45, Harry bid goodbye to Dobby and made his way down to the entrance hall, where Hagrid was already waiting. The massive gamekeeper broke into a wide smile when he spotted Harry. "There ya are. Ready fair Diagon Alley, then?" Harry nodded enthusiastically. "More than ready. How are we getting there?" "Flew powder from Professor McGonagall's office," Hagrid explained as they walked. "Not my favorite way to travel, tell ya the truth. Makes me dizzy. But it's quickest." Professor McGonagall was waiting for them, standing beside a large fireplace that Harry hadn't noticed during his previous visit to her office. She held a flower pot containing glittering powder. "Good morning, Mr. Potter. I trust you slept well." "Yes, Professor, thank you," Harry replied politely. "Excellent. Now, have you traveled by flow powder before?" Harry hesitated. He knew how flow powder worked from Dobby's explanations but wasn't supposed to have experienced it himself. "No, Professor. My guardians preferred other methods of transportation." McGonagall's lips thinned slightly at the mention of his mysterious guardians, but she didn't comment. "Very well. Pay attention then. Take a pinch of powder, throw it into the flames, then step into the fireplace and state your destination clearly. Keep your elbows tucked in and don't fidget or you might end up in the wrong grate." Hagrid went first, squeezing his enormous frame into the fireplace with difficulty, throwing down the powder, and calling, "Diagon Alley," before disappearing in a whoosh of green flames. Harry followed, trying to look appropriately nervous as he took a pinch of the powder, though Dobby had prepared him well for this moment. The sensation of spinning through fireplaces was disorienting despite his preparation, but he kept his elbows tucked in and his eyes shut until he felt himself slowing down. He stumbled out of a large fireplace into what appeared to be the back room of a pub. Hagrid caught him before he could fall, brushing soot from his clothes. "There ya are. Not too bad fare your first time. This is the Leaky Cauldron, famous place." Harry followed Hagrid through the back room into the main pub, which was dark and shabby but crowded with interesting-looking patrons. Several people nodded to Hagrid, who waved back cheerfully as he steered Harry toward the back door. "Best keep a low-profile fare now," Hagrid muttered. "Once people realize you're Harry Potter, we won't get anything done fair the crowds." They entered a small, walled courtyard behind the pub. Hagrid counted bricks above the trash can, then tapped a specific brick with his pink umbrella. The brick quivered, wriggled, and then a small hole appeared, growing wider and wider until it formed an archway onto a cobbled street that twisted and turned out of sight. "Welcome," said Hagrid, "to Diagon Alley." Harry gasped, his amazement entirely genuine. No description from Dobby, no visualization exercise in the room of requirement could have prepared him for the reality of Diagon Alley. The sun sparkled off cauldrons stacked outside the nearest shop, owls hooted from a dark emporium, and robed figures hustled past carrying packages of all shapes and sizes. "Amazing," Harry breathed. "In it just?" Hagrid grinned proudly. "We'll need to visit Gringotts first, Wizard Bank. Get ya some money from your vault." As they walked toward a snowy white building that towered over the surrounding shops, Harry tried to take in everything at once: the fascinating window displays, the street vendors hawking unusual items, the sheer variety of witches and wizards going about their business. Gringotts was imposing up close, with burnished bronze doors guarded by a goblin in a scarlet and gold uniform. Harry had read about goblins, of course, but seeing one in person was different: the clever face, the long fingers, the watchful eyes that followed them as they approached. Inside, after passing through a second set of silver doors with an ominous poem engraved upon them, they entered a vast marble hall. Hundreds of goblins sat on high stools behind a long counter, examining precious stones, counting coins, or scribbling in ledgers. Hagrid approached a free goblin. "Mornin'. We've come ter take some money out of Mr. Harry Potter's vault." The goblin peered down at Harry. "And does Mr. Harry Potter have his key?" Harry froze. Dobby had mentioned a key, but they'd assumed it would be with whoever was designated as Harry's guardian, presumably Dumbledore. "Got it here somewhere," Hagrid said, rummaging in his many pockets and eventually producing a tiny golden key. "And I've also got a letter from Professor Dumbledore about the you-know-what in Vault 713. The goblin examined both items carefully, then nodded. "Very well. Grip Hook will take you to both vaults." Grip Hook. Another goblin appeared and led them toward one of the doors leading off the hall. Unlike the opulent marble entrance, this door opened onto a narrow stone passageway lit with flaming torches. It sloped steeply downward, with little railway tracks on the floor. Griphook whistled, and a small cart came hurtling up the tracks toward them. They climbed in, Hagrid with some difficulty, and were off, racing through a maze of twisting passages. The cart seemed to know its own way, as Griphook wasn't steering. The breakneck journey ended abruptly beside a small door in the passage wall. Griphook unlocked it with the golden key, and green smoke billowed out. When it cleared, Harry gasped at the mounds of gold, silver, and bronze coins piled inside. "All yours," Hagrid smiled. Harry stepped into the vault, staring in amazement. Dobby had told him his parents had left him money, but he'd never imagined this much. He filled a pouch with coins as Hagrid explained the wizarding currency: 17 silver sickles to a gold galleon, 29 bronze nuts to a sickle. After another wild cart ride to Vault 713, where Hagrid collected a small, grubby package that he refused to discuss, they returned to the bright sunlight outside Gringotts. "Might as well get your uniform first," Hagrid said, nodding toward Madame Malkin's robes for all occasions. "Listen, Harry, would ye mind if I slipped off for a pick-me-up in the leaky cauldron? I hate them Gringotts carts." Harry, who had hoped to explore the shops without supervision anyway, readily agreed. He entered Madame Malkin's shop alone, feeling a flutter of nervousness at his first solo interaction in the wizarding world. Madame Malkin was a squat, smiling witch dressed all in mauve. "Hogwarts, dear?" she asked when Harry mentioned what he needed. "Got the lot here," another young man being fitted up just now, in fact. In the back of the shop, a boy with a pale, pointed face was standing on a footstool while a second witch pinned up his long black robes. Harry recognized the description immediately from Dobby's warnings: Draco Malfoy, son of Dobby's cruel master. Madame Malkin stood Harry on a stool next to him, slipped a long robe over his head, and began to pin it to the right length. "Hello," said the boy. "Hogwarts, too?" "Yes," said Harry, keeping his tone neutral but friendly. "My father's next door buying my books and mother's up the street looking at wands," said the boy in a bored, drawling voice. "Then I'm going to drag them off to look at racing brooms. I don't see why first years can't have their own. I think I'll bully father into getting me one and I'll smuggle it in somehow." The boy reminded Harry forcibly of the stories Dobby had told about Lucius Malfoy's arrogance and entitlement. "Have you got your own broom?" the boy went on. "Not yet," said Harry, thinking of the toy broomstick that had been his favorite possession in the room of requirement. "Play Quidditch at all?" "Not properly, with teams," Harry replied carefully. "But I enjoy flying." "I do. Father says it's a crime if I'm not picked to play for my house, and I must say, I agree." "Know what house you'll be in yet?" "No one really knows until they get there, do they?" Harry answered, remembering Dobby's descriptions of the 4 houses. "Well, no, but I know I'll be in Slytherin, all our family have been. Imagine being in Hufflepuff. I think I'd leave, wouldn't you?" "I think any house has its merits," Harry said mildly, unwilling to engage with the house prejudice that Dobby had warned him about. The pale boy gave him a slightly surprised look, as if unused to having his opinions questioned, even gently. Before he could respond, Madame Malkin said, "That's you done, my dear," and Harry, relieved to escape further conversation with Draco Malfoy, hopped down from the footstool. "Well, I'll see you at Hogwarts, I suppose," the boy called after him. Outside, Harry found Hagrid waiting with 2 large ice creams. "Happy birthday, Harry," he beamed, handing one to Harry. "I know it ain't much compared to a proper present, but thought you might like a treat while we shop." "Thanks, Hagrid," Harry said enthusiastically, genuinely touched by the gesture. As they continued their shopping, collecting everything from books at Flourish and Blots to potion ingredients at the apothecary, Harry experienced a strange mix of emotions. On one hand, he was thrilled to finally see the wizarding world for himself, to touch and smell and hear all the things Dobby had described over the years. On the other, he felt a constant pressure to maintain his cover story, to appear appropriately naive about magic while not seeming completely ignorant. The balance was especially challenging in Flourish and Blots, where Harry desperately wanted to explore the advanced magical theory books but had to restrict himself to his first-year textbooks and a few innocuous extras that wouldn't raise eyebrows. "Just your wand left," Hagrid said finally, consulting Harry's list. "And I still haven't got ya a proper birthday present." "You don't have to," Harry began, but Hagrid waved him off. "I know I don't have to. Tell ya what, I'll get your animal. Not a toad, toads went out of fashion years ago, not a cat, they make me sneeze. I'll get ya an owl. Dead useful, carry your mail and everything. 20 minutes later, they left Elop's Owl Emporium with a beautiful snowy owl fast asleep in a large cage. Harry couldn't stop thanking Hagrid, genuinely moved by the thoughtful gift. "Don't mention it," said Hagrid gruffly. "Now, Ollivander's next, ain't no place better for wands." The last shop was narrow and shabby, with a sign reading, "Ollivander's, makers of fine wands since 382 BC. A single wand lay on a faded purple cushion in the dusty window. A bell tinkled somewhere in the depths of the shop as they entered, and Harry felt a strange tingle of anticipation. This was the moment he'd been waiting for, a real wand of his own, after years of practicing with sticks and wandless magic. "Good afternoon," said a soft voice. Harry turned to see an old man standing before them, his wide, pale eyes shining like moons through the gloom of the shop. "Hello," said Harry awkwardly. "Ah yes," said the man. Yes. I thought I'd be seeing you soon. Harry Potter." It wasn't a question. "You have your mother's eyes. It seems only yesterday she was in here herself, buying her first wand. 10¼ inches long, swishy, made of willow. Nice wand for charm work." Mr. Ollivander moved closer to Harry, those silvery eyes barely blinking. Harry fought the urge to step back. Your father, on the other hand, favored a mahogany wand. 11 inches. Pliable. A little more power and excellent for transfiguration. Well, I say your father favored it, it's really the wand that chooses the wizard, of course. Mr. Ollivander had come so close that he and Harry were almost nose to nose. And that's where. He touched the lightning scar on Harry's forehead with a long, white finger. "I'm sorry to say I sold the wand that did it," he said softly. 13½ inches. You. Powerful wand, very powerful, and in the wrong hands, well, if I'd known what that wand was going out into the world to do. He shook his head and then, to Harry's relief, noticed Hagrid. Rubeus Hagrid. Oak, 16 inches, rather bendy, wasn't it? "It was, sir, yes," said Hagrid. "Good wand, that one. But I suppose they snapped it in half when you got expelled," said Mr. Ollivander, suddenly stern. Yes, they did, yes," said Hagrid, shuffling his feet. "I've still got the pieces, though," he added brightly. "But you don't use them," said Mr. Ollivander sharply. "Oh, no, sir," said Hagrid quickly, an error occurred. Move forward into the next chapter. The end. Thank you for watching this video. Please be sure to subscribe to our channel and like this video.